right, what's up, y'all? Welcome. It's another open forum debate, open Q&A. You got questions, you got problems, you got challenges, you got a goiter. I don't even know what goiters are, but if you got it, you can call in and I'm going to heal you. Put your hands on the screen. We're going to heal your gout. We're going to heal all of your ailments, your illnesses. And I'm joined with Nick, the apologist from Fearless Truth. How you doing today, Nick?
I'm good, man. Good to see everybody here. Hope everyone's doing well.
Yeah, Nick and I have been talking about doing a stream for a while because we did some streams with God Logic debating a lot of Muslims, and those did pretty well. So this is long anticipated. Nick's going to join me today for the Q&A and the open chats. And if you want to call in with an argument, a question, a disagreement, it's all open topics today. We're going to try to keep it focused on theology, preferably. We want to talk about Orthodox theology, church history, the councils, patristics, apologetics. If you're atheist, if you're agnostic, if you're Muslim, if you're Protestant, if you're Gnostic, if you're a pagan, whatever it is you want to call in, you go right to the head of the line and feel free to ask whatever you want. I know Nick's been doing a lot of debates with Muslims while we let people kind of roll in. What's your recent, I know you debated that was like a Muslim, what's that guy's name that you recently debated?
You talking about the one on Inspiring Philosophy's channel?
Yeah, what was that guy's name?
The Orthodox Muslim?
That's it, yeah. Tell us about that debate. Give us kind of rundown of how it went from your perspective and where you thought his weakest points were and what the crux of it was.
Yeah, man. So we had two different debates. The last one was we were speaking about whether or not you can, worship when the worship that was given to Christ is going to be considered true worship, actual worship. And he was trying to say, no, in Matthew, it's the hypostatic union is never taught. The worship there isn't given. And I tried to explain to him, like, hey, even if you look at the New Testament, right, the word proskuneo in the Greek, it's never used besides worship. Even when it's used with Cornelius, when he worships proskuneo with Paul, I believe it's Paul or Peter, one of the two, he says, hey, why are you doing this to me? Don't do this to me, right? Do not do this. And so that was how that one went. That one was really bad. And then the first one, which was a few months ago, we were talking about the Trinity, and he was trying to run, it seemed like some sort of argument to make us fall into like three gods, so to say, polytheism. And we were arguing about what the monarchy is. He was saying that us as Trinitarians, we don't believe in the monarchy of the Trinity. Only certain people believe in the monarchy of the Father, and he just has no clue what he's talking about, unfortunately. And we kind of see this with a lot of the Muslims nowadays, is that they don't study like Eastern Orthodoxy, what we actually believe. They study the basic watered down version of Christianity, and then when they talk to Eastern Orthodox apologists, and I tell them things like, hey, they're one God, not just because of their nature, but because they have the same operation of action, right? They have the same energies. They get real confused. I was talking to a Muslim today, and I told him, yes, God has the one shared energy between the person and the Trinity. A dude thought I was talking about like energies of a light bulb. I was like, bro, this is crazy.
We'll be going back and forth between the chat and between the call-ins. Chastity, you're the first caller. What's on your mind? Gotta unmute. Unmute, dude.
Hey, can you hear me right now?
Yes, sir. What's up?
Perfect. So first of all, I want to say it's an absolute pleasure to speak with you. I just had a couple of questions. I'm recently coming from the atheist side, but prior to that, I was Pentecostal. Unfortunately, but I was looking into returning back to Orthodoxy, but I'm from an Ethiopian background, and I was looking to go into the Oriental churches, but I've been reading and I've been looking into what you've even said, and I've seen a lot of Sam Shamoun's stuff, and he's kind of saying the apostolic churches are kind of equally okay. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we did a whole video, me and Kai and David Erhan, refuting this idea that there's a sort of a generic apostolic Christianity. If you go to the Christians of the first 1,000 years, none of them believed in a generic apostolic Christianity. They all believed that even though all the sides thought the other sides were wrong, whether you're Orthodox, Oriental, or Roman Catholic, they all believed that the other sides were not part of the church. So there's no such thing as a generic lowest common denominator Oriental, or excuse me, apostolic Christianity. So that's just fundamentally a flawed, nonsensical ecclesiology. Paul says there's one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one body. You know, if you look at the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed, it's one holy Catholic Apostolic Church. So that church isn't the one that's divided amongst three branches or any of that kind of nonsense. So it's just fundamentally contrary to ecclesiology and to Christology. Nick, did you have any? Nick, hold on. Let me get Nick, see if he has any comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say to that point. I mean, this is kind of the whole reason why, as Orthodox Christians, we don't take any other Eucharist that's valid, right? Because we don't think that. I mean, these other sects, they're not even like the other sects that might call themselves Orthodox Christianity, right? Like Oriental Orthodox. I mean, we're very particular about how we administer the sacraments. And so I think even just seeing that, you can look at the first 1,000 years and see that they were the same way in how they administered the sacraments. They didn't see them as just some sort of open phlegm that anyone could have, but it's rather something those inside the church could partake in.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like, nobody in the first 1,000 years of Christianity practiced this sort of open communion where everybody could commune.
Right, yeah, and I've done quite a bit of research. I watched a couple of a majority of the first part of what you did with David Urhan, and I think you're completely right. I was kind of looking to, I'll be honest, kind of cope because I wanted to go to that church, but it's pretty clear that it makes sense on every level with regards to the continuity and the idea of the one true church. So that's honestly kind of what I just wanted to ask, and just wanted to clarify if there was any sort of way to see it on any other perspective, but it kind of answered what I need to there.
Yeah, no,
Thanks.
I mean, there's just not really, because it's what's Orthodox ecclesiology or what's not. So, and also, I mean, when eventually it's a little difficult, but if you get into the Christology, it's not, you don't have to go too far into the questions to figure out who has the right Christology, and that's why we've been doing that ongoing series with me and Kai and David, which we're about 4 or 5 parts into. But Josh, what's up, man? How you doing? And then we'll go to Rick. Josh, you want to unmute?
Hey, brother, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
What's up, dog?
Oh, man, chilling. Hey, first of all, thank you for recommending on whatever episode it was, the book from Father Seraphim Rose, Orthodox and the Religion of the Future. Great book, just finished it. So I wanted to ask then, kind of keeping with that track of literature, where orthodoxy and conspiracy kind of meet, any other reading recommendations along those lines?
Well, Father Spiridon Bailey has a book that's kind of a follow-up to that, Orthodoxy and the Kingdom of Satan, and it deals a lot with, spiritual warfare, Zionism, NGOs, CIA, all that kind of stuff plays into some of the chapters of his follow-up book. But yeah, I mean, orthodoxy and conspiracy theories, I can't think of any other text.
It's such a niche topic. It's kind of hard. I was thinking about books. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what you just recommended. It's perfect. I was definitely wanting something along those lines.
Yeah, you would like
What
that book.
about,
Yeah.
Similarly, just obviously you deal a lot of this when you suggest books that the elites educate themselves with, in their master's programs and whatnot, but more like an entry level, third person perspective. What about just, CIA tampering with, progressive Christianity and such?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a book that John Adams, who's in the chat, he's been reading, and he's been doing a book report on, which is actually about the relationship between the American state and evangelical liberalism. So I'm going to ask him in a moment to come up and recommend that book, because I can't remember the name of it, but more specifically, David Wimhoff's book on Henry Luce and Time Life magazine and John Courtney Murray. It's called The American Proposition. That's a very absolutely essential text. It's right here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, it's called John Courtney Murray, Time Life, and the American Proposition, and it's a Catholic lawyer named David Wimhoff who wrote a giant 700-page book on the history of, and I mean, it mainly focuses on Catholic liberalism, but it also does touch on and explain the doctrinal warfare program using liberal Protestantism as well. So that's a crucial text. But let me ask John what that other text was, and then, I mean, Nick, feel free to hop in if you have any.
I don't got nothing on conspiracies. I don't got. That's all you.
Well, this is this is like religious engineering, and the state wanting to control the church. John, what's that book that I've been listening to your podcast or your audios of?
It's called From Bible Belt to Sun Belt.
Okay.
By Professor Darren Deutschuk.
Bible Belt to Sun Belt, Professor Darren Deutschuk.
Yeah. And then another one is The Evangelist by Francis Fitzgerald.
Okay, cool.
And those two together, if you read them together, they kind of complement each other.
Awesome. All right, perfect, John. Yeah, feel free to stay up and chat if you want. Maddie, what's up? What's on your mind? I'm mute.
What's happening, my ziggo?
What's up, dog?
What's up, dog? I've got a quick thing to ask you about. Yesterday, I see the Mr. Orb Manifestation dude streaming himself. So I jumped on his live and clipped it and asked him about how he swears divine simplicity fall into modal collapse, right? Expecting to get some sort of, at least some sort of defense. And his whole thing was
he doesn't know anything.
Saying, no, I'm not God and I'm infallible.
He doesn't know anything about any of that.
Bro, he called me he's just talking shit, man. I said to him, listen, look, like, the premise in which you're arguing from is that I'm an
Your mother was doing muta with the Shia, and you, son of the devil, go back to hell, you son of the devil, while your mom does muta with the Shia. That's all he knows, dude.
He's just talking mad shit, and I was saying to him, like, listen, like, if we by this lane of argumentation, right, and if you follow Aquinas, for instance, isn't he an infallible being as well, who is not God, right? So he was just basically preloading his assumptions without demonstrating. He was like, I don't need to demonstrate it. You're not God. You're infallible. I was like, bro, fuck this.
Yeah. Well, have you seen his clip where he calls the energies, like he makes fun of the divine energies?
He makes fun of the divine energies, but what's so interesting is that last time when I spoke to him, he actually admits that we have to make distinctions as human beings in determining the actions of God. However, that doesn't pertain to the idea that God is compartmental, he's made out of parts. So I was like, dude, like, distinction doesn't entail composition one. And you just affirm the idea that there are distinctions in what he can and can't do. And he was just like, you're not God. You're infallible. I don't have to take what you say because I have to take what the entire church says. I was like, bro, like,
well, I mean, that has nothing to do with the question of infallibility. So he's just deflecting because he doesn't know, of course. Daniel, what's up, man? Thank you, Maddie. I mean, Nick, do you have any comments on Catholic apologists like Sam Shamoon?
I mean, I don't got any comments on. I mean, if anyone's taking Thomas Aquinas to be dang near infallible, though, that's the first issue.
That's the problem.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big issue.
Daniel, what's up, man?
Hey, Jay. Just a quick question here. I come from a Baptist background, but now I'm inquiring Orthodoxy after learning that PSA is most likely false. Only question I have is on Hebrews 6. I feel like it makes sense under PSA because how can a debt be paid twice? But curious how under non-PSA, how you look at Hebrews 6, where it's like impossible to renew those who have been enlightened.
Well, I think Hebrews 6 is talking about apostatizing to Judaism, and if you apostatize, and kind of like the passage that the only sin that can't be forgiven is rejecting the call of the Holy Spirit, I don't think it's actually physically stating something against the Holy Spirit, because many people who've done that have been saved. So I think Hebrews 6 and blaspheming the Holy Spirit are just talking about, persevering in apostasy. So, but what's that relationship that you're making between that and paying the debt? Explain that to me.
Well, I was just thinking, because in obviously verse 4 it says, for it is impossible for those who are once enlightened, etc., and then that they would re-crucify Christ essentially. Now, if a debt's been paid, it makes sense because you can't pay a debt twice. Christ would have to be re-crucified to pay your debt again, right?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, I think it's because he's talking about specifically going back to Judaism, and all of the rituals of Judaism, Paul is saying, are fulfilled in the ritual of Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. So there's one ritual that, quote, pays the debt that we owe. But the thing that with the debt that we owe, it's, if you read Pomazanski's book, there's a section in it about the controversies in Byzantium, where this comes up with the deacon Satyricos, who tried to argue that the payment was between the Father and the Son. And one of the things that comes up is, well, if you read the Psalms, God can't be paid by created things. He says in the Psalms, I own all the cattle. There is no animal sacrifice that you can give that will pacify me because I already own all the animals. So God isn't placated by creatures, whether it's the physical human nature of Christ or whether it's, the blood of goats and bulls. So the debt is a way of speaking of what we owe to God and our lack in terms of our sinfulness and missing the mark. It's not a literal payment model that could ever even be exchanged. And you also can't have a payment model from PSA between one person in the Trinity and the other. It can't be a payment from the Father or from the Son to the Father, because that excludes the Holy Spirit, and that's anti-Trinitarian, because everything in the Trinity is triadic. So where is the Holy Spirit in this payment model that, you have Anselm pioneering with, his satisfaction theory of atonement and so forth. So the debt payment model is there in the scriptures. It's just that it's taken by the Protestants and by PSA to be this nominalistic legal status and this sort of literal and infinite payment method, exchange method, which is just not even triadically possible. It's not ontologically possible, given that God owns everything anyway. So none of it really makes any sense when you actually get into the totality of the theology. And I mean, what could you pay God with? How is God paid off? In other words, if God is literally paid off, then God is imperfect because he lacks. But God has no lack; he has no need. So why would he need to be paid off?
Right. Yeah, totally. And in regards to Hebrews 6, then, is it fair to say that if a Christian apostatizes and goes to Judaism, it would be impossible to renew him, or is that like hyperbolic language?
I think it's a little bit of hyperbolic language, but what I'm saying is it's like the sin of blaspheming the Holy Spirit. It's not if you literally went from Orthodox Christianity to Judaism, you could never be saved again. I think it's saying that if you think that's the route that you want to persevere in and you die in that, that's you're done. So because there've been plenty of people who have apostatized and come back, and we wouldn't say that, well, sorry, you only get one apostasy, you can never come back. Because if you think about it, that gets very difficult to actually make sense of. Like, I mean, every sin is kind of an apostasy. And so why would it be only the sin of apostatizing? Would it be just to Judaism or to any religion? I mean, plenty of people have been raised, Orthodox, cradle Orthodox. They had years where they went and partied and were atheists, and they came back to Orthodoxy, right? So we wouldn't say that all those people, oh, no, you can't be saved. And there's actually already a debate in the early church with, I think, the Novatianists and some of the holy rollers of the first, second, and third century. They were actually arguing this position that nobody could, if they were traditors, which in the early church, a traditor was a person who handed over the manuscripts of the Gospels if they had them. So that was seen as a version of apostasy if you gave up to the Roman officials the copies of the Gospels, because they were rare. And the debate was then, well, what about other sins? And some of the Novatianists and others said, well, if you are married and you commit adultery, you can never be saved again, because it's not just the sin of apostasy. They argue that basically any sin, and this would eventually play into like the Donatist controversy too. So what ends up happening is that the church in the early, third, fourth, fifth century basically says, no, we're not, perfecti. We're not holy rollers. We live in a world where people are going to sin. And so when they come back, there will be, penances that people have, especially if it's something like adultery. And the penance for adultery in the early church was pretty severe. You'd have to sit on your knees outside the church for like a year during the services, that kind of stuff. So, in other words, the attitude of the church was that, no, this is not a literal statement that any, leaving of the faith at any point in your life means that you can never be saved again, which is how you'd have to interpret it. So, and that is literally how the Novatianists and other groups interpreted this passage.
Totally. Okay, thanks for that. I'll look over it with that mindset, and yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the just sort of surface level, I'm not saying that you're doing this, but a lot of the very surface level readings of the text that Protestants have, it leads you to really preposterous conclusions. And many of those conclusions are already conclusions of heterodox groups in the first, second, third, fourth century. They did the same mistakes already.
Well, yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting because like things like that debt repayment, they think because PSA and Protestantism takes it out so bad that suddenly that we don't believe that there's any sort of debt repayment, but we
Yeah.
do. But then there's guys like R.C. Sproul, right, that go on and say that how the Father turned his back on the Son and how the Trinity was split for a moment in history, and they take it to a whole new level. So it's not that we don't believe it, it's just that they take things out of proportion a lot.
Yeah, it's like all these terms, atonement, debt, legality, like all that terminology is true. It's in the Bible, but the problem is that a lot of these people import into that the Protestant post-Reformation, post-Enlightenment meanings, which none of the early church fathers or medieval theologians thought that way because like they weren't nominalists. Nominalism hadn't come about yet. So how could you have, if you read like Justitia Dei by Alistair McGrath, there's no way you could have this, or Gabriel Biles, or excuse me, Heiko Oberman's book on medieval nominalism and Luther. If you read those books, you realize that there's no way they could have even had the Protestant PSA model in their mind because they didn't think in terms of the divorcing of the thing and the symbol and the reality, or the word and the reality. Go ahead.
Hey, by the way, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So this is the exact argument I was making. This is why quote mining is not going to work. You can pull all the quotes from the fathers. Like, we're fine with words. Words aren't the problem. It's their meaning. So when you have kind of Augustinian and Latin kind of Reformed views, like you just pointed out, nominalism, no pun intended.
It's hard to hear you. Can you speak up a little bit?
Sorry,
it's okay.
I'm skiing while I'm talking.
Dude's debating while he's skiing.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that on the lift. I'm like, has it ever been done? Debate ski?
No, you're the first.
Anyways, this is something these people never get. And in part, it's because they're not philosophically trained. They don't understand that there's these kind of presuppositions that are read into these kind of words. So what good is it if you just keep cherry picking and quote mining the fathers? It's like the words aren't the problem. I have no problem. None of us have any problems with penal language, atonement, guilt, these different things. It's what does it mean? Is it an Augustinian kind of presuppositions? Is it nominalism from the reformers? They never answer these questions.
Yeah, and Nick, I'll let you say something if you want to just a second. The last thing I want to point out here is if you go back to Hebrews 6, it says in chapter 6, now remember, this is people who want to go back to Judaism. I think that's important for this context. He says, it's impossible for those who are once enlightened and have tasted the heavenly gift. So that's baptism is enlightenment, illumination. And then the tasting the heavenly gift is the Eucharist. And to become partakers of the Holy Spirit. And have tasted the good word of the powers of the age to come, if they fall away, to renew them to repentance, since they crucify again the Son of God and put him to open shame. That is, I think, a specific reference to Judaism and Judaism's involvement in the crucifixion. So I don't think that this is just Paul saying that, you know, anybody who ever falls away or doubts or, you know, became a 17-year-old atheist and then, you know, like they can never be saved again. Again, it's just really an impossible interpretation, and it conflicts with what we see, you know, in the life of the church anyway. So I think what makes more sense is that Paul's saying specifically, if you guys want to go back to Judaism, you're basically re-crucifying Christ, because all the symbols of the ceremonies of Judaism are about the crucifixion of Christ. So it would make no sense. But we got, let's say, people are tagging some of the Protestant dudes to come and debate here. We got
we get some Muslims, something, man.
Yeah. Does anybody disagree? You come to the head of the line. We're gonna go to all you guys, but Top Coon, what's up, dude?
It's a crazy name.
You want to unmute, dude?
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, I just have two questions for you. So, what is your assessment on the Fourth Crusade? Who do you think was truly responsible there? And do you know if all of the Orthodox jurisdictions have forgiven the papacy?
Oh, I think the papacy was in the wrong, but I don't know anything about jurisdictional forgivenesses. I really don't.
I don't know what he means by forgiven the papacy.
Yeah, like in the early 2000s, like the papacy apologized for it, but I don't know, like, what's the assessment from the Orthodox jurisdictions?
I have no idea. I mean, it's a tough question. I mean, that's more of a historical. A historian would be better at that. And I don't really honestly keep up with like a lot of like the church politics type stuff. So I really don't know. It's a great question. Laptop, what's up, man? A lot of those things that are like gestures like that, they don't really mean much anyway. It's all just kind of done for like public consumption anyway, like the papacy saying, "Oh, sorry about," because the papacy, if you remember, they actually did an apology to the Templars. Believe it or not, they issued an apology some years back to the Templars, which I thought was kind of weird, but maybe the papacy agrees with the Gnostic Templars now, so that's why they apologize. I don't know, but guys, if you want to call in, you can call in right there with the Twitter link. We got a nice, we got almost 1,000 over here on YouTube. You can call in right there on the X link. And then if you want to support the stream through super chats, feel free to send a super chat through Streamlabs, pinned in the chat and also in the show description. But you can also send a super chat natively through YouTube if you'd like to. Laptop, what's up, man? I'm you.
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, I just have a question. I was listening to Molyneux's live stream the other day, and he said at the end that he's going to be debating you coming in March. Is that right?
That's what's the plan, yeah. We're having a round 2 atheism debate with Molyneux.
Very, very interesting. Okay, I'm the last person on earth to ever tell you how to debate, but I've been listening to him for almost like 15 years, and if there's any interest, I have lots of notes of various videos he's made and timestamps and his arguments and all. If you're interested in anything, I just want to wish you good luck.
Did you hear our first debate?
Yes, I downloaded that, and to be honest, it seemed like you guys were having more like a friendly convo, and he was trying to figure out 7 from coconuts, so it didn't seem like a debate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. I mean, he was, civil and cool, and we had a good conversation. So hopefully it works out. You never know. A lot of times stuff gets planned and then it falls through. But guys, if you want to support the stream, you can do so again through super chats. Everybody's being stingy today, but thank you guys for the meager super chats. We got a nice hype apologist on the stream with us. He's over here. He's not mean. He's a nice guy. I'm mean.
Nice guy, man. See me smiling. Come on now.
See, he's smiling. Where's the super chats at?
That's what I'm saying. Come on,
I got
man.
my unmute dude. And by the way, if
he
you
even
guys
got his nice shirt on today. What are y'all doing?
If you guys get nice and magnanimous, I will also perhaps share the super chats with Nick. Let's see. Justinian, what's up, man? Got to unmute, man.
Hi there, Jay. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
So nothing really on my mind right now, but just to answer the question of Guy about, the Orthodox modern reaction to the papacy's apology to the Fourth Crusade. I think Patriarch Bartholomew back in 2004 actually accepted the apology.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, just a minor thing.
No, that's cool. Appreciate that. Thank you. Like the collective wisdom of the audience, and our audience is like super high IQ. So we always get like really nice, solid answers and intel from the audience. Go ahead, John.
Humanist gestures, by the way.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, is like when they do this kind of stuff, I mean, it's really just for optics and like you said, humanist motives, I think. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's ecumenism. I mean, I think...
Oh, ecumenist. I think you said humanist. You're saying ecumenist motives. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I know I've heard... So I can't remember when it was. You remember, like, years back, Father Trenum had given a list of stuff that needed to be corrected before the union could ever happen? He gave, like, his own list of things.
Oh, no, I didn't know he did that, but yeah, there's a lot of those kind of lists like that going back to Byzantium.
So on one of the lists is that particular thing would be the Fourth Crusade.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
That would have to be apologized for. So, or that would have to be corrected in some way. I'm going from memory here, but basically, I'm guessing in the academic world of whether it would be. I don't know anything about Orthodox academics, but
in Roman Catholicism academic, that's still like a debated thing with the Fourth Crusade. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I need to. We should probably do like a deep dive eventually on the Crusades and Byzantium, because we've never really done that on the channel, and it'd be fun to do. Pulse,
Now the
what's up?
super chat's flowing.
Yeah, now, yeah, exactly. We had to do a little bit of begging, a little bit of
panhandling,
a little bit of panhandling and grifting on the channel, and then we got some super chats rolling. We'll read those in just a second. Pulse, what's up, man?
Hey, Jay, I remember a couple debates ago, I forget who it was that you're debating, but you kept going back to observable sense to try to get some common sense into the guy that you're debating. But I would encourage you to not forget the unobservable power of unobservable nonsense.
Okay. I'm not sure which debate. Was that the debate with Jake where we were debating empiricism, and he was trying to argue that Ibn Taymiyyah was an empiricist and God's an empirical being with a body and all this nonsense? Or was it a different debate?
Exactly. Nonsense. Yeah, you nailed it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Jake is kind of a nonsensical person and when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And I think, Nick, you've had some interactions with Jake. I think the chat is pointing out that you got Jake to admit that there's 99 ontologies in God. So what was that debate, and where'd that go down?
So basically, what was good? He heard, I guess, that I was like the top Trinity apologist. I never said that. I don't know where he got that from. But he was like, oh, this God logic teacher, so-and-so. He's like, let's set up a debate. I was like, oh, of course he wanted to debate LPT because it's the only thing he knows. I said, you know what? Fine, we can do LPT. Just, I emailed him, asked for some times. He's being a prima donna about it. Wouldn't like email me back. I was like, we don't need to email about this, whatever. And then eventually one day I went live and he said, you know what? I'm just going to pop up on his live and try to catch him by surprise. He came up on my live, tried to press me on the LPT. I refuted it. And then I ran a consistency argument because he said, well, don't you believe that the attributes in God and the energies are ontologically distinct? I said, no, do you believe that? And he said, yeah. I was like, so your God has 99 ontologies? He's like, yeah, he has multiple real ontologies. I'm like, wow, isn't that something? And then I pressed him on, I was shocked. I really thought he was better than this. I pressed him on some random stuff because he was like, yeah, there's a real distinction. I was like, how are you using real distinction here? Are you using like a sort of Eastern sense of real distinction? Or are you using like a scholastic, like major minor real distinction? And he didn't know what the difference was. He didn't know what the difference between a formal and real distinction was either. And so it just kind of exposed him of like not knowing what he's talking about at all.
Yeah, I remember when we did our debate and he stacked up the books that he had read and he was trying to brag that he had done way more research in Orthodoxy than I did on Islam. And I was like, all those books look absolutely brand new. They don't look like they've even been touched, dude. I think you bought the books.
There's no way they were. He literally said, when I was sitting there in the debate, I was like, what's the difference between a real and formal distinction? He was like, you could hear him like get up from the desk. He was like, I actually have a scholastic dictionary right in front of me. You don't think I know what that is? I'm like, no. Yeah, I don't think you do. Can you tell me? And he just started throwing ad homs at me. And I don't think he reads.
Yeah, I mean, he'll read a little bit. He'll read a paper here and there. Really what he does, I've noticed, Jake's strategy is to basically, anytime there's a debate between, say, a Catholic and Orthodox or an Orthodox and a Protestant, he'll just go and like write down the best arguments that, say, a Protestant made against an Orthodox or a Catholic made against an Orthodox. And if he's debating an Orthodox, he'll just use those arguments that the Protestants and the Catholics use against Orthodox. So
well, you'll notice too, if he's debating Orthodox, anytime he debated Orthodox, I'll give you $100 if he doesn't do it. If he doesn't appeal to Bo Branson, well, your buddy Bo Branson said this. I'm like, dude, Bo Branson is not your homie. Why do you keep,
right.
Why do I keep bringing him up?
Well, speaking of homies, like it's funny, he was rating Christian apologists and he went to me and I thought for sure he was going to put me in the garbage tier. And he was like, I'm going to put Jay up at the top because
I was shocked.
You know what? He goes at the top. He's elite tier, even though I think I won the debate.
I couldn't believe it, man. I thought she was going below me.
I know, right? I thought I was going to be in the trash can, dude. But all right, so we got a couple of super chats. I'll read those, then we'll go to the next call. Let's see. Maddie says, Nick, Muslim Lantern is live calling out Christians. So yeah, if you guys are in the chat, the way to do this is to get hit up Muslim Lantern in his audience and give them this chat, this link to the space home to call in. Maddie says, again, do the Crusades. That would be a great lecture series. Yeah, we'll see. It'll take me a lot of time to do it, but Gamer, go ahead. Did you want to say something? Nick,
Are you
did you
talking
want
to me? No, I wasn't saying that.
Oh, I
was
thought you were
saying
starting to
my
say
co-
something. Okay.
No, I was confused.
Gamer, $10. Jay, I have a question unrelated to the stream. I recently discovered you, and I find Orthodoxy has a consistent worldview, and it's coherent, and it's very inviting. What is the Orthodox position on stabs, and what are the good resources for that? I mean, I don't think the Orthodox Church is going to give you a position on private moral, like medical choices, but I would say that, I mean, unfortunately, we saw a lot of bad advice in the last coof period years. So, I mean, I would say the church was half and half on specifically the experimental coof stabby. But I think many solid Orthodox people would have a disagreement with stabbies that come from a cell line related to, aborted fetal tissue type stuff. But I'm going to leave it at that because we are on YouTube. But Japanese script says for $2, I'm broke. We gave all of our money to Alex. Do you mean Alex Jones, Alex O'Connor, Alex Sanders? I don't know which Alex, but Suko, $20. Nick is the homie. He got that wicked Jake to admit Allah has 99 ontologies. Exactly. That's a good admission from Jake.
By the way, and they're also admitting, when I was debating the Orthodox Muslim of the day, they admitted their God is spatially extended. They've been admitting that rather often lately, that you could literally take a rocket ship up to their God if you had a powerful enough one.
Yeah, he's a dude like the Mormon God the Father. Like he's like a buff, dude, like my song says. He's got
what confuses me is
he's got a
always
toned
say,
body, baby. He's got a very toned body.
I think he's like Elastic Man though, because they always say, I say, where is he? And they just say you point up. But I'm like, if I'm on this side of Earth and you on that side of the Earth, is he like rapping? Yeah, like what?
Who is it in Fantastic Four? Is it the chick, the one that's stretchy? I forget. So they worship Allah is the deity of Fantastic Four.
Who is that?
Landon, $50. Thank you so much, Landon. God bless you, Jay. Yeah, that's a fat super chat. Appreciate that. Zane, $20. Here you go, boy. Got that wiggle laugh. $20. Nice. Raven says for $5. Can you actually heal my gout? If you can, that's cool. Yes, put your hand on the screen and say a prayer to St. Pat Robertson, and it will heal your gout.
Is it Mr. Fantastic? Is that who it is? I think it is.
Is that who's stretchy? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it is.
Okay, let's see. Griff, $2. Thank you so much, Griff. Our favorite super chatter here, Banana Up the Butt, says for $10. Jay, you should read Edwin Hunt's book about he was always giving me book recommendations. I'm going to write that down. About the Peruzzi family. They're one of the founders, and they're one of the funders of the Crusades. And all the conflicts need funders, as you've discussed for years. Yeah, I didn't actually know about that, so I should check that out. The 29 system, $20. Ecumenism, more like cuckoomanism, pretty much. Taint Nuffin, $20. Is it problematic for Roman Catholics when they call St. Photius a heretic, despite his communion with Rome until his death, meaning that you could be a practicing Catholic and unknowingly a heretic? Well, they would, I mean, if you're a trad, they're going to argue that. But the problem is that since Father Dvornik's work and since John Paul II, they have rehabilitated the the great hierarchs, right? So Photius, Mark of Ephesus, and Gregory Palamas are now considered saints within the Roman Catholic Communion. So that's the key sort of contradiction to really grab the Roman Catholic and say, look, you guys are totally inconsistent. Griff, $2. When are you going to do that Resident Orville gameplay stream? Well, I tried Cyberpunk, and it was a little weird because I didn't remember the controls, but I did play a bunch of Cyberpunk yesterday, so now I've got the controls mastered. So I might do another Cyberpunk stream, but when the new Resident Evil comes out, I will game stream that. Anthony, $5. It's a swole dude with turban floating in space.
Allah.
Oh,
have you played Ark Raiders yet?
I'm going to. No, I haven't got around to it.
That's fun.
Yeah, I heard everybody's been saying I need to play that one. Wink, $3. How would you respond to the idea that Jesus' sacrifice was purely for guilt over creation, because the Father saw the creation as evil. No, that would be totally Gnostic. And again, like creation is declared good in Genesis, right? So why would God need to be placated or reconciled to the created order because the created order is evil? That sounds like a more Gnostic version of PSA. All right, let's go to Baby. What's up, dude? Baby Moon. You're on the air with Jay and Nick.
Hey, Jay.
Yep.
So I just started listening to you a few months ago, and oftentimes I hear you talking with Protestants, or let's call them debates, which they don't turn into much debates, but you'll often refer to where did Protestants get their canon of the Bible, and you just never really get pressed past that. So I'm not here to press you on it. I'm not in a position to debate you, but I've always wanted to hear the answer to the question. So if we go back to, say, Martin Luther, if we consider him kind of preeminent reformer, right? So I would lay it out as, hey, he wasn't trying to disregard everything about the church, right? It was about a reformation, not a scrapping of total church doctrine, to where the canon of the Bible would have just followed over with him. So I mainly want to hear what would be your answer to that objection.
Well, the problem is that Luther didn't agree with the canon. So the canon that was already normative in the West and the East included the Deuterocanon, and Luther specifically didn't want the deuterocanonical text because he thought they, quote, taught against the word of God and against the gospel. So, for example, if you have, prayers for the dead, if you have, texts that talk about the necessity of works, those Luther saw all of those texts within the Deuterocanon as problematic, and so he had a specific theological motivation. And I've read like 6 Luther books, so I'm not pulling this out of my butt. Like, this is literally what he argues. Like in his commentary on Galatians, he says that anything in the Old Testament, even that doesn't, quote, preach gospel of free grace, he has a problem with. He says things like he wants to punch Moses' teeth out. So ultimately, Luther's problem isn't even with like the issue of, this or that verse in, the Deuterocanon. Luther's problem is more so any of the text in the Torah or anything that he thinks teaches, quote, law and works. So there's a pretty radical dichotomy position in Luther between grace versus works, law versus grace, etc., free will versus, grace. Those are all radical dialectics in Luther. So the answer is that Luther specifically didn't carry the canon over. He rejected the canon that was normative.
Okay, I think that's a very fair answer. I thought you might go that direction since he had rejected some of the books. So let me go back and say, what if I remove Martin Luther from that? We take his finite objections out of the way and just look at the reformers as a body who did ultimately carry, most of the canon over, right? I know there's a section of it that...
Well, no, most of the reformers are pretty united in rejecting the Deuterocanon. Except for high church Anglicans. Like, high church Anglicans didn't really think the Deuterocanon was a big deal. They didn't make a huge deal about it, but and that's part of the reason why the Deuterocanon, the Apocrypha, is in the 1611 King James Version. So, but the rest of them, Calvin rejected it, Zwingli rejected the Deuterocanon. So, like the other, quote, reformers, and that's the problem with saying that there is this body of reformers, they disagreed with each other and killed each other over things like infant baptism. So there isn't really, in my view...
I know, it's a hard thing to get your arms around.
Well, there's not really a body of... There's not a body of reformers. There's a bunch of people who, reform, but then they go to the point of really... again, and like Father Josiah says in his books, like some of what the reformers are saying is correct. It's just that their answers of low church stuff and rejecting, quote, rituals, all the stuff that they go towards goes way further than what Orthodoxy would have considered a real Reformation.
And what would you say that would have been? If what would Orthodoxy have considered, quote, a real Reformation?
Well, all the main issues that we would have with the papacy and with, Roman Catholic ecclesiology and Roman Catholic, they had a lot of these excesses that, Luther talked about when he was critiquing Tetzel, the monk, and, they had indulgences and the merits of the saints, all those things Orthodoxy would disagree with.
Okay. Well, Jay, like I said, I knew it was going to be a softball question, so I appreciate you taking the
No,
time.
great questions. Appreciate it. Always happy to answer those. I appreciate you having a good attitude, not being a jerk. You were cool about it. Colin, what's up, man? And Nick, if you want to say anything on Protestant church history or Luther, feel free.
So hopefully we get some opposition in here, man. I think that we must have ran through them all together.
I think I've run through all the ops. That's what I was trying to tell you. Like, don't expect many more. I remember the last time a Muslim came in here, man. It's been probably hilarious. 8 months since a Muslim came in here. Colin, what's up? You want to unmute?
Hi there. I was looking to clarify some of your views on the flood and possibly debate you.
There you go.
Okay.
So do you think that, so you say that it's a global flood. Do you think that it killed everybody?
I mean, I think we're intended to think that. I mean, unless there was something that we're just simply not told. I think the text gives us the impression that, yeah, everybody but Noah's family.
Yeah, so, I mean, I get your point that every myth has the story.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think of even like Native American myths, in order for that to be a myth, it would have to have survivors, you know, in the culture.
But the point of our view of how that happens is that when Noah's sons repopulate the earth, we find out very early in Genesis that Noah's sons already, you know, engage in quite a bit of wickedness. So what happens is, as the earth begins to repopulate, you get this idea that the nations fall back into all the same problems that they were already involved in with idolatry. So in other words, that seed story immediately gets tainted with false revelation. And that's why we would say that pretty much, I'll give you an example. I did a talk specifically on this topic of what's true in ancient religions from Genesis forward. So in other words, we have divine revelation, we would say, in scripture that kind of looks back at the, you know, ancient world and the you know, pre-flood, pre-diluvian world. But there were civilizations and cultures after the flood that would have maintained this sort of basic body of knowledge that they had of, okay, yeah, my descendant, you know, Noah, my great-great-granddad Noah, you know, he was with the family in the boat, and they made it through the great deluge, and then the gods came down and helped, right? So in other words, it's the post-Noahic descendants that would have tainted the mythology, tainted the story with mythology. And it's not just the flood that shows us that. Oh, he left. Okay, it's not just a flood that shows us that. If you look at this interview that I did with Seraphim Hamilton some years ago, we actually got into how even pagan religions or world religions, like even some of them maintain, and I don't mean this in a zeitgeist type of sense, but I'm saying like they have seeds of truth, right? They have the seeds of the original, you know, two man and woman. They have the seeds of, you know, some of these Genesis stories in a very corrupted, paganized way. And the answer to that is that, yes, the descendants of Noah that had that then fell back into idolatry and sort of mixed up the stories with superstition. That's I don't know why you left, but anyway. David, what's up? Hey, what's up, man?
Oh, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Hey, Jay, I just wanted to say I've been listening to you for a long time now, and I'm an Orthodox catechumen, and I saw you, Ron. I just wanted to say thank you for a lot that you have been able to share and produce with YouTube channel.
Thank you.
But other than that, being a catechumen, I have some conversations with some of my friends who are Protestant, and I had to admit that I don't actually know the Orthodox Church's view of like tribulation and like post-tribulation and pre-tribulation. So I was wondering if you could comment on that for me real quick.
I mean, there's not like a set view of like how we know everything's going to go down. We don't have this like 7-year, you know, premillennial rapture type eschatology or whatever. So, I mean, partial preterism is the norm amongst most of the Eastern Church Fathers. You can look up an audio book that's from Jordanville Monastery. It's called Apostasy and Antichrist, and that will kind of lay out the basic structure of what most of the elders and saints and church fathers say about the end times. But I've found that video that the way that I think this is wow, it's almost 50,000 views. Me and Seraphim Hamilton talked years ago about the seeds of Christ in the pagan religions, and this would apply obviously to the Noah story too. So there is that link right there in the chat. Nick, did you want to say anything on any of that?
Not on that. I was gonna say though about the previous conversation you had about the flood, whether or not it's global or local doesn't really change anything in Orthodoxy, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't say it was local and it wasn't global. Like, that's what science came out with. It wouldn't really change anything in Orthodoxy. There's a good book on how they line up with that. It's called Navigating Genesis by Hugh Ross. He's an astrophysicist who goes into how it can be either local or global, and it wouldn't matter either way.
Yeah, I remember reading that book years ago. I've read other Hugh Ross books. My one criticism of Hugh Ross is, he's a theistic evolutionist, which I would be critical of that perspective. But I think, I mean, even if conceivably it was local, would that necessarily be a problem? I don't think so, but I'd have to think on it more. But let's see, Eden, $3. Apart from the Orthodox Church granting autocephaly apart from the EP intending to grant autocephaly to the Church of Montenegro, that's done for the State Department. It has nothing to do with because of church stuff. There are talks in Bosnia about forming a new Orthodox Church of Bosnia. Well, that's what they do when they divide up these countries in terms of like the color revolution style stuff. The religion is part of it. So that's what this is about. Second Actuality, $3. Jay, are you familiar with King Gillette? He wrote books and he's the founder of Gillette Razors. He was a famous internationalist. No, I didn't actually know that. I was rewatching the Anthony Sutton lectures and he mentioned that these are some of the first texts that would mention, corporate Fabian socialism. No, I actually should read that because I didn't know that I didn't even know that. Mindhack sends $1. It says, yes, thank you, Mindhack. TR says $2. Orb. So orbs are $20.
Mm-hmm.
Alex says for $50, do a Matthew McConaughey voice and tell me why space is fake and gay. Well, I tell you right now, I took my Lincoln up into space one day when I was up there, and man, I just found out, I felt like I was just gay as hell when I was up there. They was trying to touch my butt. It was all just about big black holes, and I thought, this black hole is a bunch of gay stuff. Conquistador, it says.
Bro, that's so good. That's crazy.
Appreciate it. Conquistador, $5. If Orthodoxy is the fullness of the church, why did God allow Spain to evangelize the New World to Catholicism? What about these other peoples and cultures before Orthodoxy? Does Orthodoxy accept or reject the black legend about Spain? Well, I mean, you could ask that same question about, if you were Roman Catholic, you could say, why did God allow Orthodoxy to, permeate all these other countries that Rome didn't? Why did God allow Protestantism to become the norm in, the Protestant Reformation countries? We don't know the divine providence and why God allowed or didn't allow, but really none of that has anything to do with proving which one's true or false. It's a very terrible line of argumentation. I'm not trying to be mean to you. I'm just saying I wouldn't. This doesn't prove anything. It's kind of that, the Roman Catholics love to go on this line of, we conquered this and that, and we beat the Muslims here and there, therefore we're the true church. Well, that's a double-edged sword. That's a stupid argument because you realize like the Muslims are now conquering the Roman Catholic Church. So, Rome is saying that Muslims and Christians worship the same God, and they're going to have a Abu Dhabi Faith Center. So, wait, does that now mean that Rome isn't true if you use that line of argumentation? It's just a bad line of argument. I don't know I don't even know about the black legend, so I couldn't say what that is. Suko, $5. You got to have Soren cleaves antiquity. Jay on an AI edit where you all go to Agartha with Yakub. That sounds fun. Make it. Go ahead and make it. In Christos, $5. This is a Orthodox patristics question. What's the understanding of the Melchizedek typology versus theophany? Yeah, I've never understood. Melchizedek, as far as I know, in the Orthodox Church, is a specific person. It's not a theophany of Christ. The only reason people think this is because it says that his generation and his lineage is unknown. Well, that just means that Genesis didn't tell us that on purpose so that he would be a type of Christ. It doesn't mean that he is Christ. He's not a theophany of Christ. Dinko, $5. I was agnostic. I was baptized Roman Catholic. I'd like to go back to Christianity. I visit an Orthodox church. Should I stay Roman Catholic or go Orthodox? Bro,
What you think we gonna say?
what does he think? What do you think we're going to say? You got to be Orthodox, man. No, you don't become a papist. Wink, $3. How would you respond to the idea that... No, we did that one. Okay, so I'm just trying to catch up on some of these. Rachel Wilson, shout out to Rachel, sends $50. Slowboy says, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. It's your birthday. Right? So everybody sing the 2 Chainz song to me about big booties and whatever. I forget what he sings about in that song.
There we go.
I think Kanye's in that song too, isn't he? But or he references Kanye. I don't know. It's not technically my birthday, but it is coming up very soon. So, but
When's your birthday?
basically, wait, why are you trying to dox me, dude? Trying to
Dox is his birthday. Dox is crazy.
It's tomorrow. Tomorrow's actually technically my birthday. Xenophon, what's up, man?
Go.
Xenophon, what's up? By the way, we got a nice crowd of almost 1,200. If you would hit like and share it. What's up?
What's up?
Hey, Jamie.
I'm a fan of both of you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Jamie. Go ahead.
So
I need an espresso.
My question is about when Jesus doesn't know the hour.
You'll
Hear some responses to that, like that he knows it in his human nature. He knows it in his divine nature, but not his human nature. And I think some fathers have explained it that way. But I've heard some of these Muslims recently talk about, like they're saying that's the agnote heresy.
Yeah, they've been trying to use that argument lately.
Yeah, I mean, this has been answered a million times over. I don't know what. Yeah, so I'm going to put in the chat a really good article over at Orthodox Apologetics website right here. It's called "Was Jesus Ignorant of His Second Coming?" There is the link right there. And basically, if you look at other places in the Gospels, this is the way St. Basil answers it in his letter 236. You know, he says things like,
I've heard you talk
yeah, Jesus says there's no one good but the Father. You know, there's no one knows the Son but the Father. Okay, well, does that mean that no human beings know him, or that the Holy Spirit doesn't know him? It's just rhetorical language that's intended. Jesus does this all the time, where he says, you know, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. He's not literally telling you to cut your hand off. It's a turn of phrase.
Right.
I think Basil's explanation is the most, because there's other passages that say explicitly that the Son knew all things. So
yeah, the disciples directly come to Jesus and say, "Well, now see."
Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
In the human nature.
Hold on one second. Let Nick go ahead and reply. Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry,
I don't know if you can hear me, but can you hear me, Gus?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, what I was gonna say was, you even see in other parts chapters where the disciples literally say, "We now see you know all things." The Ignote heresy isn't even just saying that Christ doesn't have some sort of knowledge. It's just saying that he doesn't know things in virtue. If you say, "Oh, well, you know, he doesn't know anything in virtue of his human nature," the divine nature doesn't transmit knowledge to the human nature, because we say he knows things not in virtue of his human nature, but in virtue of his divine nature. And so the Muslims will try to conflate that and say that there's, you know, some sort of symmetry with saying that he doesn't know something with the Ignote heresy, but they're just misunderstanding it in the first place, because the issue was more about the fact that they were collapsing the two natures into one and then saying that one nature didn't have this knowledge. So
right, that's what I kind of thought. I kind of thought there was, like, it's saying that his knowledge of it isn't natural to his human nature, but I think they're confusing what the Ignote heresy is.
Yeah, appreciate that. Good question, Xenophon. Let's see. Anybody disagree? We're looking for some of the ops. If you disagree, raise your hand. I know it's all these blank ass profiles with no pictures. That's always the people who disagree, because it's people that were blocked that had to make it.
Yeah.
So JT, what's up? I see you got no profile image, so you got to be a hater. What's up?
Hey Jay, hey Nick. I just had a question about you've talked a lot about paradigms and paradigm level arguments, and I wanted to ask you if you think when people have a hard time understanding the arguments, is the problem like an inability to step outside of their own paradigm, you think, or like just assuming that it's not straight up dishonesty?
I think it's a combination of things. I think people don't, you know, they're trained to think in little, you know, stack the box on the other box. That's sort of the foundationalist model of how most people think since since the Enlightenment, or even maybe earlier than that. So they don't really think about holistic systems level thinking. I also think that we had a guy who called in a few months ago, and he was making a good argument that even psychology, and you could take it with sort of a grain of salt, but he was arguing that even psychology's kind of studied and figured out that a lot of people literally can't even think at a systemic level. It's just kind of there's like an IQ tier that people that are sort of under that are unable to get to, and that lines up with a lot of my experience. I mean, I know ultimately some of the problems are obviously spiritual, but when you ask, for example, we did that 6-hour stream where we asked all the Muslims to just simply restate the example or the canon conundrum argument, and they literally couldn't even restate it. That's the whole point of that meme. How would you feel if you didn't have breakfast this morning, right? So there's something there too with, I think, a barrier to whether people can do sort of abstracted thinking, and then abstracting from abstractions another level above that. So all of those things, I think, contribute to why it's very hard for people to understand, paradigm thinking or paradigm level arguments.
Nice. I mean, would you say, I mean, this is just the plainest way, would you say there's a level of it where some people are literally too dumb? I mean, you said that. I don't know if you're just joking.
No, that's essentially what I'm saying. I mean, that's saying it in very simple terms. And I mean, that doesn't mean those people can't be saved, but it's like, certain types of arguments. I mean, even the classical arguments, like a very, complex version of the Kalam cosmological argument, which I don't think is a very good argument. But I mean, there's an IQ barrier for some people you're not going to go down to Somalia with 80 IQ people and like convince them of God's existence or Christianity through some, wild Kalam cosmological argument. They don't know what you're talking about. That's why the elders, when they go and convert some of the tribes, like they realize that a lot of these people have very low IQs, and they will actually say, I just basically give them catechesis of 3 points. There's one God, Jesus God, and you can't have 10 wives, pick one. That's like the catechesis of like some of the tribes. They don't sit there trying to convince them of the eternal manifestation versus the filioque. John, do you want to say something?
Well, even if you think of it on a simpler level, think about how there's people on the political level that can't even see with outside of a paradigm, much less the philosophical or the theological.
Yeah.
And like, it's very hard for even just an average American, if you were to, like, the thing you and I joke about is that why do you have books that you disagree with on your bookshelf? Because nobody goes and reads opinions that are opposing, and they don't go read other people's books to understand the opposite end of the spectrum. It doesn't even enter into their mind to do that in any sort of subject. It really doesn't even matter what the subject is.
Yeah, one thing about college that was good was being forced to read all these people that I never would have read otherwise. I probably would have never read David Hume or, I don't know, Hans Gadamer or any of these, existentialists like Sartre. Like, being forced to read and understand those positions was actually, it was laborious, and a lot of times it was boring, but it was actually good in the long run to be exposed to and to understand the ops positions. And that's ultimately what makes you, I think, a good, it's what Aristotle said, an educated man can state a position without necessarily agreeing with it. And, uneducated people unfortunately can't do that. So,
well, another thing too, sometimes like something you're opposed to will have elements of truth in it. And then somebody might say to you like, oh, well, so-and-so talks about that makes it good. And then, but you're able to formulate an opinion that says like, well, no, just because someone might say a good thing here doesn't make the entire philosophy good.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Christos, what's up, man?
Hi, Jay. I'm just wondering what your kind of view is on the fallibilist position of I don't know, them saying that they don't need to give a justification because it's not necessary and it's too much explanation. Do you know what I mean?
I think the problem with that is that it kind of begs the question. It's like, well, why ought we believe fallibilism, right? Why? I mean, if positions don't require justification, I think we're in a worse state. We're in even worse hot water. because then we don't really have any way to adjudicate between good positions, bad positions, good paradigms, bad paradigms. So I think it's more of a cop-out, kind of like pragmatism. We had somebody call in a couple days ago, like, what's wrong with pragmatism? I'm like, well, I mean, it doesn't tell you. It's basically just copping out. So I see it, the same type of thing going on with any position that would say, well, justification is not, I mean, I don't think we have to expect like Descartes' level of, perfect, omniscient, absolutely indubitable, certitude, because I'm not sure that any position can actually provide that level of certitude. But I would say whatever the highest level of certitude is, something like a transcendental category, I mean, which is necessary to have any knowledge. Like, I would say that's the highest type of perfection. And if we're not going to go in that route, we're going to go in the route of saying, there's just not really justification. It just isn't possible. I think it's just even a worse position. So, and if that's the case, then why are you even debating, right? Like, how are you gonna argue that position and debate that position?
It's axiomatic, bro.
I spoke with one of them and it got down to the point of, okay, both our worldviews could be illusions. Now what?
Well, yeah, and if they're at that point, then you've done your job as an apologist, because that's reducing the positions to absurdity. If the worldviews are illusions, then we're not debating at all. Josh, what's up, man? By the way, guys, we're joined today by Nick from Fearless Truth. His channel is linked in the chat in the show description if you want to go follow Nick for his many debates and apologetic works over there. What's up, Josh?
So,
are people joking that Joe Rogan?
I'm looking it up.
Are they
right
trolling
now.
me? Did Joe Rogan
I'm looking
die?
it up. I'm not seeing anything on X.
Okay, they're just trolling. What's up, man? Josh, what's up, dude?
Hey, Jay. Hey, I'm just actually new to being Catholic. I left being a Presbyterian.
I'm sorry.
Last year, and anyway, I was wanting to. I've been listening to some of your stuff and just trying to wrap my mind around some of the ideas.
Okay.
So, what do you, or does Eastern Orthodoxy, like, on nature and grace, is it pretty close to Catholics, like, or?
I mean, we do believe in a distinction between nature and grace, because you would have, grace is uncreated and nature is created. But, in the Roman Catholic Church, grace is a supernatural creature. It's not uncreated. So that's a huge fundamental difference between us and the Roman Catholics. But we do believe there's a distinction between nature and grace, for sure.
Okay. And what about something like the Council of Orange? Is that somewhat close to y'all's position, or not really?
Well, the East never had to deal with the issue of operant grace from Augustine, because the East never accepted the Augustinian presupposition. So there was never this idea of, operative and cooperative grace. There's really just grace was always seen as operative. And one of the reasons for that was because of Christology. Christology mandates that, from the councils, that Christ's human nature has the same identical nature that we have. So if he has the same nature as us and he has two wills and two energies, there can never be a point when human nature loses its own will and energy. If it has its own will and energy proper to it, then synergy is always the case. And the problem with the Augustinian position of operant grace is that it's hard to understand how that doesn't negate synergy, because operant grace means that grace becomes the overriding cause that moves you to believe, that moves you to repent, etc. So I know it's not Calvinism, but it's still it's still a form of monergism, because it doesn't recognize synergy at every stage.
Oh, okay. I haven't thought about that before. Okay. And what would be a good resource to get into, looking at the Trinitarian and Christological, like being able to look at those, dogmas, and then abstracting from that to anthropology.
Yeah, there's two books, right? There's two books. I would say read St. Cyril of Alexandria and the Christological Controversy by McGuckin, and that will kind of iron out a lot of the problems in Western Christology. And then I would read Free Choice in St. Maximus, because he contrasts the anthropology and the mode of willing between the Augustinian view of Christ and man and the Orthodox view of Christ and man. Both of those books are absolutely essential. I think, to show the difference between the two in terms of Christology and anthropology. Sword, what's up, man? And Nick, did you want to say anything on?
I was actually going to recommend the Christological Controversy too. So
yeah, that book's really good.
It's a good one.
Sword, what's up? Sword, you got to unmute, dude. You unmuted, but you didn't turn your mic on. So if you turn your mic on and come back, I'll go to you. C, what's up? Everybody's being so generous because it's my birthday.
Yeah.
Hey, yo, $5. Jamie, give me an espresso. Destroy Bonu Klein something. I don't know. $20. Sorry about my name. With Norse pagans, the religion is based on race. I'd actually argue it's based on tribe, because it's not even, they didn't really have a conception of race the way that we think of race nowadays. But I think, yeah, it's definitely tribal. For example, there are no Indians in Valhalla. Well, yeah, you're not going to put the, rival tribes in Valhalla. According to the worldview, wouldn't it imply that every religion has its own, like each tribe or race has its own religion? Yeah, but I think what you realize is that when you debate with pagans and you get into it, they don't really believe it to be real. It's more of like a social factor that binds them, and it's just kind of a bunch of myths and stories that kind of supposed to inspire you to be heroic or whatever. They don't really typically believe in, ontologically speaking, all of these gods and Odin and whatnot. Many of them. I mean, there's some that do, but anything you want to say on neo-pagan type stuff, Nick?
I could care less about Norse paganism, bro.
Neil Perry, $10. Happy birthday. Thank you for what you do. Thanks, man. Stasis, $3. The Nestorian Church evangelized China. This is hundreds of years after Nestorius. The gospel was shared, but it fused much with Buddhism and Taoism. Well, I would say that Nestorianism isn't the gospel, but I get what you're saying. Do you have any thoughts on how heresy caused that religion or Christianity to disappear in that region? Well, again, I think if you break off from the church, from the source, even if you have the Bible and they have these things that are true, what is Jesus says that if you're not grafted into the branch, you're going to wither and die. And so that's what we see with a lot of these churches and sects in history that die out, is that the gates of hell ended up prevailing over that domain or that religion. C, what's up? You want to unmute?
Hey, I got a question, man. I'm sure you've heard this multiple times, but I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it, and I'm an Orthodox Christian myself. But I'm just struggling with the question of if God is all knowing and all powerful, then what would be the point in creating beings he would know are going to hell anyways in the end? Like, just seems kind of cruel to me. I myself would rather have just never been born if I knew that I was going to go to hell in the end. That's, I guess, my question.
Well, I mean, I think the difference between Western Christianity and its emphasis on predestinarianism, whether it's Augustine, Aquinas, or Calvin, like they all stress predestination and the direct causation of the divine decree with Calvin, for example. The difference is that I think in the Orthodox conception, God created out of his own goodness, not because of any need or any lack or any vengeance or vindictiveness. And in the Orthodox view, the only thing that sends you to hell, quote unquote, is your own actions and your own free will. So the difference is that we stress the responsibility of our own volition versus worldviews that stress the causation of God, so the direct causation of God. So I would say that it's still better to exist than to not exist, because God created those beings with the potential to be with him. And he didn't do that because he lacked, anything or needed anything. He did that for the creatures themselves. So
I think a good point too is that when we see like the story of Lazarus and the rich man, like we see that the rich man, he isn't sitting there begging, saying, I wish I would have changed my life. I wish I would have done this. We see him still doing like the same sins that he was doing on earth. He was still treating Lazarus like a servant, even when he was in Hades at that point, right? So he's non-repentant even when you die. So I think that we have to understand that people in hell, like a lot of people have this notion that the people in hell are going to be like, oh my gosh,
Right.
like
Exactly.
now I want Christ. No, it's not the case. They're still continuing sinning. That's why hell is eternal, because they're put in such an unrepentant state that they'll never return. There's no chance for them to ever return to Christ.
Yeah, this is the point of that C.S. Lewis book, Marriage of Heaven and Hell. If you never read it, I recommend it, because the point of the book is that in this fantasy fiction, like, there's a bus that takes people from hell to heaven, and the people from hell that go to heaven absolutely hate it. Everything about heaven just makes them miserable. It's a torturous thing, and they would rather be away from God than in God's presence, because they've already decided that they don't love God. So it's a very different conception of hell than the sort of, Latin, Dante's thing where you're thrown into lakes of fire or you're frozen in a giant pool of ice or whatever. Like, it's a very different conception, because it's basically saying it's the Great Divorce, not Marriage. Marriage of Heaven and Hell is the universalist book that C.S. Lewis is writing against. Thank you, chat. Anastasia, $5. Jay, I was watching the debate with Tim Gordon. At one point he asked you if in the Orthodox framework you could worship an energy of God without worshiping his essence. I didn't catch your answer. So it's a silly question, because it's assuming that these things are distinct parts. God doesn't have parts. God is fully present in every one of his attributes. So if I'm worshiping God, I am worshiping all of his attributes by necessity. There is no conception of, I worship the mercy of God. And that's ironic, because that's exactly what happens in the Roman Catholic position. They have mercy, divine mercy Sunday, where you're focusing on what's her face's, mystical visions of Jesus's heart, or with the Sacred Heart type stuff. So they actually worship the parts. It's the Orthodox Church that worships the entire whole Godhead. And the whole thing about the essence energy distinction is that the essence energy distinction itself presupposes divine simplicity. This is what people don't understand. The energies all come from and proceed from a single divine essence, because there is one energy. The energies are also many, but they're also one. And so there's a perfect unity and multiplicity within God. Basil says the energies of God are infinite. Infinite is many. But he says there's also one energy, right? John Damascus says the same thing in book 1. So God is one and many, and that undermines and that gets rid of the dialectical thinking of Roman Catholicism, that you're either worshiping the divine essence or you're worshiping these many supposed parts or energies. No, it's just like, think about me. This is the Cappadocian analogy that they make. I am fully present in every action that I'm doing. If I'm riding a bike, I am fully present in that. If I build a house, I am fully present in the action or the energy of building a house. I am not isomorphically identical to the action of building a house. I am more than that. I am a person, Jay. I engage in the action of the operation of building a house. But I, as the person or subject, Jay, am more than building a house. But I am fully present in the action of building a house. So that'd be like saying, do you acknowledge Jay, or do you acknowledge Jay as the building of a house? It's a false dilemma based on the dialectical thinking of Rome. John, were you going to say something? Nick, did you want to go? John, go ahead. We'll go John and then Nick. Say it again.
I was saying it was Faustina Kowalska.
Yeah. Excuse me. I always get the histrionic women mixed up. Nick, did you want to say anything about Roman Catholic energies?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think that the thing is, you can't worship something without worshiping the thing it also subsists in. That would just be to separate the two. I mean, to say that would be to say that there's like some sort of different existences within God. Like the point you made about there being one energy and many at the same time, right? Because they're going to be united, but they're going to be distinct in terms of multiple things, like the effect they give even. And so I don't think there's any issue with saying that, you worship the energies, you're worshiping God. And we wouldn't even have to use the term whole, right? Because whole is going to entail there's some sort of parts, right? So we can just say that we worship him entirely, worship him in his trueness, right? I mean, there's no part whole relation there to actually distinguish them anyways.
Also, you could turn this argument on the Roman Catholic, because if focusing on, say, worshiping one aspect or one trait or property, whatever term you want to use, if that necessitates parts in God, or that you don't worship the whole God, you could ask that same question of the Roman Catholic when it comes to the Trinity. So when you are honoring the Son, are you therefore not honoring the Spirit or the Father? I mean, it's just a silly question. But Eugene says, I was not familiar, for $10, I was not familiar with Nick. Glad to see him. Cheers. Thank you. Let's see. Sylvanus, $5. When you look at early church father canon lists of the Bible before Hippo in 393, they're essentially adhere to the Protestant list. No, they don't. That's totally not true. I mean, if you're talking about the New Testament, yeah, there's a lot of unanimity. Or I should rephrase this. There's a good degree of unanimity on the New Testament lists. If you look in 393 by the way, I cover this question all the time, and there's several things we need to fix here. First of all, in the Orthodox, or even perhaps in the Roman Catholic mindset, we're going to take conciliar lists over individual church fathers lists. Okay, so if I look at the apostolic canons and I see, I think it's canon 85, when it lists what the canon of Scripture is, it is not the Protestant list. The apostolic canons are the normative church law in the East in the 4th century. If I look at the Council of Rome under Damasus, right, that is the normative list in the West for the church. Those are two conciliar lists. Both of those conciliar lists in the 4th century include the Deuterocanon. Notice, I'm not saying that those lists tell us definitively the Old and New Testament canon. I'm just giving them as examples of how we would see the synodal list above a particular church father's decision or list. It's only Athanasius really that lists in his festal letter the New Testament that pretty much everybody has as the New Testament. So you're unaware of the fact, apparently, that the books of the Catholic epistles, Hebrews, the book of Revelation, those were all very much doubted for many centuries in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century church. So you're absolutely totally wrong. You could read F.F. Bruce's book on the canon. You could read Lee McDonald's book on the canon. You could read Jaroslav Pelikan's book on whose Bible, which tradition. All of those will actually refute your assertion. Cleve's Antiquity, $2. Thank you so much, bro. He says, happy birthday. Shout out to Cleve. Everybody check out his channel and his apologetics as well. Blue Pyramids, $5. Hey, man, I got a question. How come, why and stuff? Oh, he's joking. Happy birthday. Foreign, why do you Catholics and Orthodox always fight? Well, we don't believe that Catholics have the gospel or correct theology. So just because we agree with a lot of people and a lot of things doesn't mean that we're on the same page. In the Orthodox conception, if you disagree with one dogma, you're no longer Orthodox. So it's not a question of well, Protestants are 30% Orthodox, so we're on the same page, or Roman Catholics are 60% Orthodox, so we're on the same page. It just doesn't work like that. It's a holistic conception. You have to hold to all the dogmas, and Rome, unfortunately, has departed on many, many dogmas. So we got a lot of people in the chat talking smack. You want to argue with me and Nick, feel free to call in. We got Protestants in the chat who disagree. There is the list right there, or excuse me, the link right there to call in.
Maybe we'll finally get some now. Hopefully not just comment warriors.
Yeah, right. We got welcome to the new members. I want to make sure I didn't miss a chat over here in YouTube. In the fifths and dollars, where do you draw the line in your acceptance of, quote, science? I mean, there is no line. I'm just very skeptical about most normie science. I'm not anti-science. I studied quite a bit of philosophy of science in my college undergrad and grad classes, so I'm aware of science. But I also know that it's admitted that many peer-reviewed studies, some even up to 50% of peer-reviewed studies, are fraudulent or are deceptive. So I put scientific claims very low in my hierarchy of authorities. It's not that I'm against science. I'm more of a skeptic. I'm more of a Humean when it comes to that. I mean, I have it reversed, right? Most people are skeptics when it comes to religious claims. I'm more of a skeptic when it comes to so-called science claims, because in the modern world, science is what we think of as science is actually more of a weird kind of pop religion. I assume that you accept some scientific discoveries. Of course, like, I mean, you have to be a complete retard to not accept some scientific. I'm just going to bite the bullet and say, no, I don't believe in any scientific. No one has ever done any science, and there's never been any scientific discovery. How about I just bite the bullet? Don't you believe that God made the universe to be intelligible? Absolutely. In fact, that's why I argue that you got to have transcendental categories to do science. So there you go. True, $20. Nick, can you set up a Monarchia and Energies talk between Jay and God Logic? $20.
I mean, I don't even know if Avery holds the like essence energy distinction or anything like that.
Does Avery have any interest in Orthodoxy? I know you guys are buddies. Has he ever mentioned or questioned you about that?
We've talked about it a little bit. I'll tell you more off stream, but yeah, we've spoken about it. Yeah. So I don't know how much he wants public on that.
Okay. JT, Jay, thank you. Nick, thank you. Jay, you're very funny. Well, thank you. I'm glad that there's finally a dude that does admit and think that I have a sense of humor. There's one guy finally that thinks I'm funny. I am a full-on science denier. I do not believe in science. I deny all 6 million scientific discoveries.
This is great.
Leon, what's up, man? That was a joke, by the way, because people won't get it. Leon. Howdy, stranger. Got some new wares? Leon.
Something wrong with this one.
Those are Resident Evil jokes. What's up, Leon? Where you at, man? I'm setting you up with all kinds of Resident Evil jokes. Okay, Sword wants to try again because Leon can't connect. Leon, you want to come back?
Can you hear me?
Okay, we'll go to Leon first because he connected. What's up, man?
Hey, brother. Happy birthday. I've been
Thank
hearing
you.
people say
Appreciate
happy birthday.
I just turned sweet 16. I got me a nice, cool Grand Dam out there.
Let's go, man. I love it. So my wife and I have been inquiring into Orthodoxy. A lot of it thanks to your content. I had a conversation with a guy who's a Church of God member. I don't know if you know much about them.
I know some.
They're kind of weird.
I know some, yeah.
Yeah, they believe in like God the Mother, and she's like a Korean lady.
Whoa.
Anyway.
I thought you meant like Church of God of Prophecy, like the Pentecostals. You're talking about the woman that started a cult?
Are you talking about the one that's like the Japanese woman or something?
No. Or hold on, which one? Yeah, there's different ones. So there's a woman that went on Dr. Phil. Now, do you think you're the mother of God? There's that woman, and then there's another one that Nick's talking about. Which one are you talking about?
I think it's the lady on Dr. Phil, whatever the cult leader is.
So you actually so they actually have people that still believe that?
Yeah, I mean, I've ran into like multiple guys just going to shop, and they'll kind of stop you and ask you, sit down and talk about the Bible, and then they launch a little attack on you. It's kind of freaky. But
and they still believe in that.
That woman's dead. Church?
She's crazy. She passed away, and they still they believe in her.
Do you know what the name of the church is?
That's what they were saying. I really didn't look into it much. I'm not too sure. But
it's hold on one second, Leon. Hold on one second, Leon. So he's talking about she was this hippie woman, this hippie chick who claimed to like channel or get revelations from God, and then God turns out God's a mother. I don't remember her name, but if you just look up Dr. Phil Mother God cult, you'll get the interviews with Dr. Phil and her. But go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my bigger question is just what's the, I guess, Orthodox perspective on eschatology? Not that they were making me question. I was just curious to hear your, in simple terms, I guess.
Yeah, just look up there's an audio book that's a short audio book. It's called Apostasy and Antichrist, and somebody some years back read the entire thing on YouTube. So I think the book's out of print, but it's a little book from Jordanville Monastery. I recommend that. And you can find Apostasy and Antichrist on YouTube. Sword, what's up? You want to try again?
Hey, yeah, I'm sorry for technical difficulties. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, what's up?
So, I have a question. I'm a member of the Churches of Christ, and I have a lot of respect for the Orthodox faith. I have a number of friends who are Orthodox, so I'm not trying to come at you guys from a position of animosity or anything.
That's fine.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of apostles and bishops and elders and all of that, particularly with the idea of succession. And what I like to do is to just give you a premise and then just have you comment on it, and then I'll be quiet and just listen.
So the premise I would like to kind of posit here is, would it be acceptable or correct understanding biblically to say that the office of the bishop is a successor to the office of the apostle, or is it specifically that the bishops, elders, those guys are individually successors to the individuals that were apostles, such that bishop is just another name for apostle?
No, I mean, the apostles were a specific, unique role. So there's no more apostles in the church. But I mean, there were many, apostles in that Jesus sent out, the 70. There were many apostles, in the book of Acts and so forth. But that was a first century reality that apostolic succession does not mean necessarily that the successors do everything and have everything that the apostles had. For example, when Ignatius is teaching in Antioch, he's the successor to the apostles, but he's not an apostle. So he has some of those powers, but he's not, for example, going to give new public divine revelations. And that's why the early church heresy of the Montanists thought that there would be an, quote, apostolic succession that included all the prophetic powers of new divine revelations. And the early church determined that the Montanists were heretics because once the apostles died, and once, for example, Jude says in Jude 3 that the faith was once for all delivered to the saints, there's not going to be any new divine revelations. So apostolic succession means the powers that Jesus gave to his disciples that are passed on include the preaching of the gospel, the administration of the sacraments, and the forgiving of sins. And so Jesus, for example, breathes on the apostles and he says, whoever sins you remit, they're remitted. Whoever sins you retain, they're retained. He says in Matthew 16 and in Matthew 18 to Peter and to the apostles, the whole college, that you have the office of the keys. You can bind on heaven and bind on earth. We know this has to do with authority and the forgiving of sins. So that notion includes also, I think, jurisdiction when it comes to bishops ruling over certain areas. And we get this not just from implication, but from Paul's epistles. He says to Timothy, he says to Titus, I put you in charge in Ephesus. Timothy, you don't lay hands on anybody too quickly unless you find them to be good and approved men, because the Holy Spirit is given through the laying on of hands, Paul says to Timothy. So that's what we would say apostolic succession means. It means the authority to preach, teach the gospel, administer the sacraments, and have the Eucharistic altar, etc. It's not new public divine revelations.
So just to clarify, I want to make sure I understand your answer correctly. You would accept then that the office of bishop is more like a successor to the office of apostle because they're not the same thing.
Well, that's what apostolic succession means, correct.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you clarifying. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, and it also, you see it's not new to the New Testament. It's what you see in the Old Testament, right? So, for example, Jesus says in Matthew 23 that Moses sits, or that the Pharisees sit in the seat, the cathedra, the cathedral seat of Moses. So in the Old Testament, you have Mosistolic succession, which Jesus acknowledges in Matthew 23. He says that that's a real thing. So apostolic succession, and then you look at Numbers 11, and you see the laying on of hands, and you see the 70 elders, and Moses lays hands and passes on his spirit to the 70 elders to help judge Israel. That is typology that the New Testament is utilizing for apostolic succession.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. I mean, even like it's where a lot of people get apostles and bishops like mixed up, because even when you see in the New Testament, Christ is talking about you can go and handle snakes and do all these things, and he's speaking directly to the apostles. And we see, I think it's Paul later on who does end up doing that, and he's completely fine. And then that's where we get these Pentecostal churches today. I think, oh, well, that's, that carries down the line today to our pastors and bishops, and now we can handle snakes. And it's like, no, that's not for everybody. It's for a specific set of people that were bishops, not just anyone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. There were things that were unique to the transition period between the Old and New Testament, which is what's going on in the book of Acts. Like the miraculous example of Pentecost. And we've covered this ad nauseum on my channel, Refuting Charismatics and Pentecostals. That's a unique miracle that fulfills the Old Testament ritual ceremonies of the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Weeks. Pentecost is the fulfillment of that, and it's a unique miracle that reverses Babel. It's also referenced in several chapters in Isaiah that the apostles under the Messiah would speak in a miraculous single tongue. And so it's everybody hearing the gospel in their own language. That's the miracle. So there's nothing in the New Testament that has anything to do with gibberish or babble. And also Pentecost isn't necessarily something that continues on for, the church 2,000 years later. However, there are people who have the gift of tongues, which is known languages. For example, in my parish, we have people that know 2, 3, 4 languages, and they're able to translate the liturgical texts into various vernaculars. That is the gift of tongues. It's not gibberish. Tipper says for $10, what is the best book on monarchical Trinitarianism? Well, really, you just read the Cappadocians. So you could read Gregory about the first best book is Gregory of Nazianzus's 5 theological orations, but also the rest of the orations too are very important. What's the best book on theosis? If you want more modern, you can get all of Dr. Bo Branson's lectures and his PhD thesis on monarchical Trinitarianism. Best book on theosis, probably something like... I
have a theosis book.
There's one, though, that's really good with Professor Mansaridis' book on Palamos. So it's deification of man, or deification in Christ. Professor Georgios Mansaridis, and it's his little pink book on Gregory Palamos. That one's really good. And then there's also Deification of Man by Panagiotis Nellis. And then Nick has a recommendation.
I lost my book on theosis. I'm going to hell.
That's okay. Development of let's see, what's the best book on the development of the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom? Well, actually, I only know of one book. I think Dvornik has a giant book on that. No, actually, it's not Dvornik. It's another Uniate scholar. I don't know where I got a hold of this monstrosity here. There is a gigantic Uniate history of the Byzantine liturgy of St. John Chrysostom by Kazimir Kucharek. That's one. But this is like an 800-page, scholarly text. You might not want that. Another text I would say that's a little more accessible is Hugh Wybrew's book, Byzantine Liturgy. I think I have it over here. Let's see. Yeah, this one is more accessible. And by the way, this one is actually really good this is an Anglican scholar, Anglican liturgist. And this book is really good for refuting a lot of Protestant ideas, especially about, the early church was low church. The early church didn't have any imagery. This book is actually pretty good for refuting that. So those are my recommendations. Buckets, what's up, man?
Yeah, that's it. How's it going? First of all, happy early birthday, Jay.
Thank you.
And Nick, your discussion with Junior was some of the most entertaining content I've seen recently. So that was fun.
Is that the Muslim? What's his name?
Yeah.
That's
the debate with aspiring philosophy. That one.
Yeah.
I thought that conversation was.
He's like the newer
very
guy on the
entertaining, to say the
scene.
least.
He's
I do have a question for you, Jay. I've been watching your content, I would say, for the past year, but I really started to watch a lot more of your philosophical content about philosophy and specifically about tag. And I've been seeing in your debates and your videos that you use a lot of David Hume and the problem of criterion, and even Barrett's kind of attack on Cogito, to kind of strengthen your arguments. And I've been doing a lot of research and readings on that. I was just wondering if you had any more recommendations to help even further bolster my arguments.
I think it's absolutely necessary if you want to go in that direction to read W.J. Wood's book on epistemology. It's a really readable Christian version of epistemology, and so he stresses virtue ethics and how you can't really do secular epistemology because it's not going to make any sense. So it's really good for that. A more technical graduate level manual is the Bonjour text on epistemology, the green Bonjour. It's usually used in grad school for grad classes on epistemology. So that one's really good. FDA has a lot of lectures and courses that are free on his channel, Patristic Faith, that you could do. But that really focuses on, certitude and epistemic questions. But I think it's really important also to understand the metaphysics stuff too. So I would say, read Copleston's, it's a whole series, but you could read Copleston's, I forget which volume it is, on the ancient Greeks, and then more modern stuff too. So the Copleston series, I'm actually going to buy the whole series. I only have like 2 volumes of it. I need to get the whole series, but Frederick Copleston on anything is pretty good for overview. All right. Do we have any oppositions? We had no ops yet, really. So, and we got
0.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 21 people in the chat.
You come on my stream, that's all I get.
That's yeah. I think they've just decided that it's not worth it to come over here. So
both of us together are too powerful.
Now it's both of us are like, nah, hell no, I'm not doing it. Okay, here we got a guy who's so Cullen wants to come back about the flood. Okay, what's up, Cullen? You're back. Go ahead.
Hello there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I accidentally signed out last time.
That's okay. I thought maybe you just left.
Oh no. So yeah, I actually agree with most of the stuff that you.
Uh-oh.
Cullen, we're having a hard time. I can't hear you, man. Maybe you need to get nearer to your hamster wheel. Sensei, what's up, man? Let's try some of these randos here with no pictures. Sensei.
How you doing? Can you hear me, Jay?
Uh-huh.
How you doing, brother? Hey, I have a question. Every time that I speak with Protestants, when they try to justify sola scriptura, why is it that they always go to 2 Timothy 3:16?
I guess because it's one of the few places in the New Testament where you have explicit reference to the text of Scripture and inspiration. So they think that it's kind of a kill shot, but they don't realize that there's some really obvious problems with citing that for sola scriptura. First of all it says is that Scripture makes a man sufficient. It doesn't say that it's absolutely sufficient for for the entire life of the church or for the Christian. Because Paul says you got to do other things too, like, for example, don't forsake the assembling. Okay, well, that text doesn't say that I need to attend the assembly. So does that mean that I could just take the 2 Timothy text and all that I need to, for the man of God to be sufficient for every good work is to read the Scriptures? No. So it's, first of all, it's not this universal exclusionary statement. Secondly, Paul is talking about the Old Testament there. So if we're going to be consistent with that reasoning, then I don't need the New Testament because Paul is telling Timothy that he's known the Scriptures from his youth. Well, what he's known from his youth is the Old Testament. So there is no canon of Scripture yet. Paul has there's books that book Revelation hasn't even been written yet. So it doesn't prove sola scriptura. It just proves that the Scriptures are central and necessary to the life of the Christian.
And in this verse, would you argue that Paul teaches what Scripture is, not what books are Scripture?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. When there's not a canon yet, that's my point with the canon. Yeah.
Okay, and then one more question, if you don't mind, on this verse. If you press somebody on it and you ask them, okay, was this verse before or after the canonization? Would the Protestant have to then bite the bullet?
Well, of course, it was written before the canonization of Scriptures.
No, I know, but if they're very hard-headed, so they like to use this, like you said, to apply to the Old Testament.
Right.
But like you said, when you actually go into the context, like you said, this is referring to the Old Testament, which you would agree was the Septuagint. So in the context of this, how can he be referring to the New Testament when we haven't even had a canon during that time?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a doubled up good argument. Yeah, because first of all, it is the Old Testament. Primarily, Paul's referring to the Septuagint. And then, which has the Deuterocanon, which is not the Protestant canon. And secondly, yeah, there's not a New Testament yet. Paul is still writing the New Testament. So, absolutely. Yeah, I think those are great arguments. I mean, Protestants are always going to just be like, it still teaches sola scriptura. Well, the other thing, too, is that there's other passages where Paul also says, keep the traditions, like in 2 Thessalonians. So, you can't just take this one verse and not also look at the other things that enjoin upon you other things that are necessary. Nick, did you have any comment?
I mean, yeah, I just think it's just going to be begging the question. I mean, if you're just going to say, oh, Scripture says this, therefore we must abide by what Scripture says, but they don't actually have some sort of justification as to how they know it's Scripture in the first place, you're begging the question at that point that's even Scripture. So
yeah, good point. Yeah, how do we even know that that's part of the canon just because Paul wrote it? And how do we know Paul wrote that other than the tradition that the church hands down that Paul wrote it? Okay, here we have, I think, a Muslim. Amin, what's up? You want to unmute?
Yo, Jay, what's going on?
Hey.
What's going on, Nick? Good to see you again.
What's up, man?
Hey,
quick question for you. It's one question, but it's in two parts, and I'll be as succinct as possible. I'm a Christian, by the way.
I'm sorry. I saw Amin and I saw Arabic. I was like, okay, we finally got a Muslim, but
sorry to disappoint.
I'm disappointed that you're a Christian. No, I'm joking.
So the question I have is about EED. I've been reading it a lot for the past couple of months. I read the 150 chapters, read Basil's letter 234, read St. John of Damascus. I read a bunch of books on it. And the question
did you read book 3 about Christology? Because that's where he really... Okay.
Yeah, I read book 3. I believe that's chapter 15.
Yeah.
And so the question I have, like, I have an understanding of it pretty well, but I don't see any church fathers explicitly stating that wisdom itself is an energy. And the reason I ask is because, 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 4 says, that's a crucial text for EED, being partakers of the divine nature. But James chapter 1, verse 5 says that if we don't have wisdom, we ought to ask of the one of God, and then he'll give wisdom to all who ask. And 1 Corinthians chapter, I believe it's chapter, I'm in the car driving. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24, I think, says Christ is the wisdom of God. So my understanding of EED, we partake in the energies, not in the essence. Being that we're partaking in the wisdom of God, would that be an energy?
It is. And the answer to this question is in Athanasius, because Athanasius, and a lot of times when he's refuting the Arians, and by the way, I have a talk on this specific question. It's on my channel. It's really old. It's like 7 years ago, because Roman Catholics are trying to use this argument that calling Christ the wisdom of God collapses energy or attribute into person. No, as this gets explained later in the Church Fathers, because we have to understand that the reason that there's not explicit statements in every 1st, 2nd, 3rd century Church Father about every one of these issues is that the issues aren't raised yet. Nobody has really significantly questioned the essence energy distinction until you get mainly to Christology, is where it really hits the nitty gritty. So what ends up happening is that, remember, all of the energies or attributes, they have a triadic movement. They proceed or move. This is called the energetic procession. They proceed from the Father through the Son in the Spirit. So that applies not just to the generation of the persons, but also the movement of the energies. And that means that every energy or attribute, you could also say the Son is the love of the Father. Well, does that mean that Jesus is love? Because we also have statements that the Holy Spirit is the love, right? Well, it's the manifestation in that sense, where the Holy Spirit manifests the love of God. The Son of God manifests the wisdom of the Father, or the wisdom of God. But just to, in some passages, equate person and energy does not mean they're isomorphically merged, or that they're subsumed. There's still an essence energy distinction, but it's not wrong to call the Son the wisdom of God. And you see this in the argumentation about this. And I understand this because this actually tripped me up one time. Back in about 2015, I was actually tripped up by this question. I was debating a guy who ended up leaving Orthodoxy, and he was arguing with me, and he said, why would we call the Son the wisdom of God in Athanasius when wisdom is an energy of God? And the answer is, you have to get later into the doctrine of the procession and the manifestation of the energies, and that's the answer.
Exactly. And okay, so then this goes into the second part of my question, and sorry for kind of dragging this out, but it's, to me, this is really interesting because I was researching some rebuttals, and I was writing about this, actually, some rebuttals to Mark 13:32. Now, St. Basil, and I actually did look up, I actually used some of those writings from On the Incarnation. It's like in section 54, where he talks about how God became man so that man can become God. And this goes into theosis. What's really interesting is that St. Basil in letter 236, where he talks about, he gives two really good reasons as to why Christ does know the hour. The first reason he gives is rhetoric. He says, the term no man can be used. It's rhetorical. But then he says something really interesting. And he says, he basically says that because of monarchical Trinitarianism, Jesus does not say that he knows the hour because knowledge starts with the Father first. And the Son,
everything the son has is a dependence relationship on the Father. So that's correct.
exactly. So it started getting me thinking, okay, so if that's going to be the case, then would this also be a reason as to why Christ knows the hour? Because, I mean, would you say that wisdom is synonymous with omniscience?
That's a good question. You'd have to actually look at a lot of the patristic like explanations and exegesis of what exactly is the connotation of divine wisdom. I mean, sometimes they describe it as like the plan of creation, sometimes because of Proverbs 7 and 8. Sometimes they describe wisdom as, sometimes it's even described as the Holy Spirit. For example, in Sirach and in Wisdom, the Book of Wisdom, like the Holy Spirit won't come and abide in a soul that is unrepentant or impure. And so it calls what abides in you in one place wisdom, and then another place the Holy Spirit. So we have also the identification of wisdom with the Holy Spirit. We have in other places where, as you said, Christ is called the wisdom of God. So wisdom is an energy common to all three, but manifests, as every energy does, in a unique way in each person. So the Father is the source of wisdom. The Son would be a unique manifestation of wisdom, and the Holy Spirit would be a unique manifestation of the wisdom of God. So I think but I think you're right to point to Basil in terms of monarchical Trinitarianism there too. And my talk, by the way, is called I Am That I Am, Essence Energy, St. Athanasius, and Sedevacanist Cults, because this argument was actually a Diamond Brothers Tradcat argument that was used a long time ago, that, well, Athanasius says Jesus is the wisdom of God, so wisdom is the divine essence, and they're all the same. They don't realize how dumb that would be an atheist. It would be a modalist. If you're going to collapse, if Jesus is an energy and an attribute, and the attributes are identical to the essence, then Jesus is the essence, and now you're a modalist. It's really stupid. But there's one more thing I want to recommend to you. You should read Crisis in Byzantium by Papadakis if you haven't read that, because this is it's a very important book for eternal manifestation. And also, you should read Florovsky's paper called Athanasius and the Doctrine of Creation, because he shows definitively that Athanasius teaches the essence energy distinction.
And read Wisdom of Solomon, specifically chapter 7 through 10. Those are good for seeing wisdom as a person too.
Wisdom 7 through 10, yeah, exactly, teaches the personification of the Spirit. I mean, wisdom.
Okay. Yeah, because I know in chapter 75 on the 150 chapters, Palamas explicitly states that, I believe like I said, I'm driving, but I believe he says something to the effect of there's three realities in God. Mm-hmm. There is the essence, there are a triad of persons, mm-hmm. and then there's the energy. So even
by the way, this is
it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is when you hear me always say, Palamas talks about there's three planes in God, Plane. That's the thing I'm referring to, that right there.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, I won't take up too much of your time. Thank you so much, and I'll get on those readings.
Oh, good job, man. You're doing really good reading there. You're on the right track. Nick, did you want to say anything about that?
No, I was just gonna say Wisdom 7 through 10. I mean, it's really good for if you want to learn the personification portion of it. I mean, it literally calls wisdom like omnipresent, omniscient. Says that it was the one who rescued them in the flood. Yep. So it's like actually action bearing, someone that's doing something. So I think it's literally the most clear thing ever to and just a lot of people just don't read it because, most people that convert to Orthodoxy come from a Protestant background and they're never taught these books. So they never think to look into them.
Exactly.
And when I read Wisdom of Solomon, I was so mad that I was, that was
deprived of that. I felt the same way. Yeah. Because when I became Catholic back in 2003, I started reading the Deuterocanon. I was like, why were we deprived of this? And then when I became Orthodox, I reread the Deuterocanon, and we on my channel, guys, we do have a lecture through the entirety of Sirach. If you want to go back and find the Sirach lectures. Don says, I'm a former atheist. I converted. I'm a current agnostic. I have bought that Mind of God book that you recommended by Paul Davies. Yeah, that's a good book. I worked through the Pre-Socratics, Plato, Clement, and Philo for my first time. I've dabbled in some of Neoplatonism. What is the church father I should read first? Well, I would say if you're coming from an agnostic perspective, I would start with something like St. Athanasius's essay Ad Gentes, because it's a pretty good little apologetic against like paganism and whatnot. And then I would read something like hold on, I bumped my camera here. I got to get it straight. Then I would read maybe Fount of Knowledge by John Damascus, because he gives a good kind of layout of patristic philosophy. But like I said, in terms of triadic theology, I would not begin with Augustine. I would begin with the Cappadocians, like the 5 Orations of Gregory Nazianzus, and that's a little book you can get from St. Vladimir's. So I would start with those to get introduced to patristic theology. Zane for $100. What's up, man? Now, y'all are being generous now because we said it was my birthday. I gotta say it's my birthday every time I do a stream now. It's suddenly going to be a lot of birthdays around here. It's hold on, we got a bunch more super chats on this. Let me go back. It's Griziak. It's Griziak. It's $20. God bless you both, Jay and Nick. Happy birthday, Jay. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. You guys are being really generous today. Wev, man, y'all's names, dude. Like, can't somebody just come up with like a pronounceable basic name? Y'all come up with the craziest names on here. Wev Citiculo, $28. Jay, I love your videos. I heard you on Lord Voldemort say the PANDEMIC was PLAN. Was it all fake? Well, I mean, I think people got sick. People got something. So I don't think everything was fake, but I don't think that a lot of what we were, told and sold was real. Was all of this intentional and also real? Yeah, to a degree. I'm not a virologist, so I don't know exactly how all that works, but I think that there was something going around. I think it was, well, we're on YouTube, but you get the idea. Jean Juan, $5. What do you think about myophysitism versus diaphysitism? Well, we are currently going through a massive lecture series on my channel. If you type in Oriental Orthodoxy Refuted, you'll get 4 or 5 installments that we've done so far, and I think we're going to do eventually 10. What exists after the incarnation? 2 wills, 2 natures, and 2 energies in one single divine hypostasis. How are the operations and will different between the two? Well, one of them is created and one of them is uncreated. That's the difference. True, $5. Jay, Nick, where are all the Muslims and the Mormons at? Get them in here. We're trying.
They're scared.
Yeah. Listen, you guys can be the recruiters. So you got the link. Send that link to all your Mormon buddies and your Muslim buddies. So the link is
on Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff.
The link is in the chat. Zane says for $100, science isn't the problem, as in science itself. Rather, it's a deduction method for the physical world. I agree with that. Sure. Yeah, I think science is a tool for studying and understanding the natural world, and that's it. So it's a limited tool. It can't tell you, for example, grand narratives of where we came from and all this kind of stuff. And that's where science goes outside of its bounds and becomes scientism. The problem with science is that they use a, quote, mathematical theory such as multiverse or, quote, dark matter. By the way, that's all speculation and metaphysics, which supposedly modern science and scientism is against. They say it is true and that it exists in an almost purely metaphysical way. Exactly. That's the main critique here, is that, modern scientism is built on the anti-metaphysical stance of the post-enlightenment worldview. And now they've come back to crazy sci-fi metaphysical stuff with multiverses and, quantum foam theory, all this nonsense. Trombone Coach, $10. Thank you so much. Don Walker, 20 New Zealand. No, we did that one. Call Me Trinity became a member. What's up, man? Ted East, $2. This is a dynamic duo. Thanks, Ted. True became a member. He says, I got to run back one of these Nick live streams. Jay might have to borrow a disguise from Jim Bob. Hell? No, Heil Soul, $10. Happy birthday. I hope you have a good one. When are you going to go back on Sam Hyde's PGL? I don't know if they asked me to come back on. The way to get me on shows or Nick on shows, you guys, is like people need to go in the chat and just remind them in the chat in the comments. Like,
yeah,
that's a better way. Because if I just constantly spam and ask people to come on their shows, they get annoyed, and they want to know what the audience wants, not what I
Yeah,
want.
that's exactly right. Yeah, if you keep on spamming it in the chat enough, they'll be like, all right, maybe they want to see the people.
Same with debates, right? So if you want Nick to debate some dude, like constantly ask that person's chat, go into Jake's chat or Muslim whoever's chat and be like, you need to debate Nick, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Lockstep, $2. Do you have any thoughts on the assisted unaliving government program? Well, it's part of, euthanasia and eugenics. So, I mean, that's part of the government strategies in a lot of these socialist countries like Canada. I've been talking about it for 15 years. So, yeah, I mean, I've have a lot to say about it. Ton 24 Smith, $10. I'm trying to understand the difference between nature being corrupted and, quote, guilty. Well, first of all, guilt in the Orthodox conception and even in the Roman Catholic conception nowadays, it only makes sense in terms of personal decision and action and responsibility. There's no such thing as nature being guilty. That would be Manichaeanism. That would be something that just doesn't make sense with anything but Calvinism. So nature is good, but guilt is accrued when an individual makes a sinful action against God's law or against that nature. And that's what you see James saying, that sin is when passion is consented to. He doesn't say that the passions are sin. He says that a sin technically is when you consent to the passions against God's law. Even the passions themselves are not evil. But there's no such thing as a guilty nature. And this is actually to confuse nature and person in anthropology. This is what Augustinian anthropology does, is that it collapses individual persons into their nature such that the entire nature is guilty in the mass damnata. And that just doesn't make any sense if you read St. Maximus, and particularly if you read Free Choice in St. Maximus, where he contrasts the Augustinian anthropology and mode of willing versus the Maximus Orthodox anthropology and mode of willing. And that's why so many Orthodox church fathers and saints will say our nature itself isn't guilty. And when we use that language, it's to speak of the deprivation or the lack of the grace after the fall. If we are justified by being united to the divine nature, doesn't this mean that nature that isn't united to the divine nature is guilty? Again, it's deprived of grace, but it's not inherently guilty because it exists. That's why Orthodox theology of Mary makes this very point. Mary is not immaculately conceived. She doesn't need to be, because there's nothing inherently wrong with her nature. But being deprived of grace is what's lacking in our nature. So you see the difference there, that there's a jump between the deprivation of grace that we're all born into to saying, well, if we're deprived of grace, then we're guilty and evil. No, it doesn't follow. Evil and guilt are not natural qualities or properties. They're negations, they're privations. So the only way to be evil is to actually do an evil action. It's not a state of being. There's no such thing as an evil state of being. That's Manichaean. Why didn't Mary need to be, quote, saved, even though she, quote, never sinned? Well, she never sinned due to grace. So she was full of grace, right? But she still died. And that's what disproves the Immaculate Conception. She wouldn't have needed to die or undergo death if she was not under original sin. So the arguments, I think, that you're arguing about Mary actually prove our position.
And I think it actually makes Mary like so much greater in the Orthodox. Like more people think that she's greater in Catholic, but like she's greater in Orthodox religion because she still had the corrupted nature that is, subsidized to death. And even with that nature, she chooses to, not sin, to actually follow God.
Exactly.
And but in Catholicism, it's a little bit different. She doesn't have that nature.
She has a cheat code. There's a cheat code with Mary, in the Immaculate Conception.
So it's more about not what she did at all, more about God is just kind of rolling the dice and granting someone this nature already.
Exactly. Black Kings, Black Bishops, Black Players. Contemporary Compendium says, happy birthday, Jay, and what's up, Nick? Thank you. That's a great Clips channel. Be sure to follow Contemporary Compendium. And by the way, the Clips channel's been popping off. Shout out to Jake Rattlesnake. Between Instagram and YouTube, he did some clips of me that got like 500,000 to 1 million views total. Dang. Shout out to Orb on Twitter over here. Orb, what's it? Orbo Bro? Orbo Bro did some clips. One that got 100,000, another got 100,000. So appreciate those. So the clips are popping off, y'all. Keep doing it. Keep churning it out. Feel free to clip my stuff anywhere, do whatever you want. I don't care. Monetize it, go for it. Just link back to me is the only thing I request. Let's see. All right, I think I've got all the super chats. Let's see. Who's next is Enchanted. What's up, man?
Hello, Jay.
Hey.
Happy birthday. Hello, Nick.
What's up, man?
I just had one idea, one short idea I'd like to share, and 2 questions.
Okay.
More on the reading list. So the idea currently I have is it's related to how dualism and modernism just destroyed metaphysics and even our basic understanding of the world. It's basically about the free will and free choice. Orthodoxy teaches that the free choice is given to choose between good things, that it is even possible to have multiplicity of good things.
Mm-hmm.
And
which, by the way, if beatific vision was true, it was not possible, but go ahead.
Yeah. And currently, even in the fallen state, we still experience and choose between good and evil things as if they both are good. And so, like, we still see them as equivalent or possible paths, let's say, when they're not. Because that is basically part of our nature to choose between good things. And that's how we perceive them.
Yeah, I think when we are in the fallen mode of willing and we choose evil, we might deceive ourselves into thinking that we're choosing a good, but we're still choosing something that is ultimately a negation or a privation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, if we talk about light and shadow, we even just in the basic words, we still presume that shadow has its own ontology when it doesn't.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like the analogy of, I mean, they didn't really have this in the patristic era, but like negative numbers are a good, idea for how kind of, I mean, it's a thing, but it's not really a thing, right? So it kind of has a linguistic existence, but negative 253 doesn't actually have ontological existence, right? Other than some sort of conceptual analogical reality that we're saying. It's kind of, evil's kind of like this, where you kind of keep digging yourself, deeper and deeper into negative reality, so to speak.
Yeah. So that was kind of my idea I wanted to share. And so the first question I had is, I've been rewatching your debate with Tim Gordon on the section of Filioque, the topic of the Trinity came up. And Tim said that we know members of the Trinity based on relations of opposition. And I understand the intuitive argument for why it's wrong, especially since we have the Orthodox model, but I don't have the specific concepts and formulations for that.
Yeah, so first and foremost, yeah, absolutely, gladly, in fact, because this is a persisting problem. So the first and best Orthodox essay on this issue of the problem of relations of opposition in terms of the Trinity is Losky's essay, Procession of the Holy Spirit in Orthodox Doctrine. Let me get that PDF for you. That one is absolutely necessary, and if you read that and understand that, you really probably won't need any of the other critiques, because Losky is so precise and so clear and so just devastating in this. It's only like 20, I think it's only 15, 20 pages. I'll put it in the chat right here. And if you pull it up, you'll get on Google, you'll get the PDF right away. I think it is a chapter in the book Image and Likeness. Yes, it is. So it's chapter 4. If you have the book Image and Likeness, you don't have to get the PDF, but there's the PDF. There's multiple levels of critique here, and this is relevant too, because if you remember when I had that so-called interaction debate, quote unquote, with Wagner had no idea what I was talking about, and he just assumed that everything that I was saying was somehow my ignorance of Thomism. Had nothing to do with that. I was pointing out that in the Cappadocians, relations of origin or relations of the persons is not the same thing as a relation of opposition. Relation of opposition is a theory that Augustine begins to kind of toy with, that really gets solidified in the medieval church, Latin church and in Aquinas. Now, Losky deals with all this in this essay, and he explicates it very well. And some of the main critiques would be, first of all, this is a critique that Farrell makes in God, History, and Dialectics. So I think it's either book 1 or 2. This is another book you should get if you can, God, History, Dialectic, volume 1 or 2. It doesn't make sense in a triad to talk about opposition, because opposition in the ancient and medieval world relates to a dyad, right? Because remember, they counted by division, and we've covered this in the debates with the Muslims about counting by division versus counting by identity. In the ancient world, for example, in the Nicene Creed, we count by division because we say that God is one and undivided. And there's also counting by identity in the ancient medieval world too, but specifically for the triad, when the church fathers and the early writers talked about, and the medieval writers thought of counting, they counted by division, which means that you have a whole, and then to count to 2, you divide that by itself, and you get 2, right? And then you divide from that, and you get 3. So they're counting by dividing a whole or a monad, and this is kind of Platonic counting as well. And that's why the creed says one and undivided. Why would they use that term? Well, they're counting by division. And Dr. Branson has shown this, by the way, in a lot of his essays and debates. They got into this with Jake years ago with Dr. Branson versus Jake in their debate. I got into this in my debate with, I think, Jake or Hikikachu, one of the two, I forget. But this has come up multiple times to refute the LPT, right? So the logical problem of the Trinity, you got to understand this kind of stuff. Anyway, that's separate from this, but it relates because in a triad, you can't have opposition. There is no opposition. If you read the Cappadocians, for example, or Maximus, Ambigua number 1, he goes to the Cappadocians to say that the Trinity cannot be a dyad. There's no opposition in God. So it has to be a triad because the triad transcends the dyad. This is a numerical argument the Cappadocians make. This is what I was trying to explain to Wagner. He didn't care about any of this, had no concern with it. All he wanted to do was clip a supposed own. But here's the problem. If you read Congar has an essay making all the same points that I made to Wagner. So Yves Congar on the Trinity and relations of opposition in Augustine. And I'm going to give you that essay right here. You'll notice that, oh, okay, so Jay actually did know what he was talking about between the Roman Catholic theologian and the Orthodox theologian critiquing relations of opposition. It's all in these 2 essays. And actually, Wagner was the one that had no idea what he was talking about. But I since have asked Wagner if he would like to read these things, and we can revisit this conversation. He has to date no interest whatsoever in looking at any of the materials or discussing it. Now, last point, beyond the fact that Congar in this essay basically says everything that I argued, that relations of opposition is not the way that the Cappadocians lay out their triad. That's a later medieval specific development in the Latin Church. Losky says there's a couple easy points here. Number one, the Cappadocians teach relations of origin, not relations of opposition. And if they use the terminology of opposition, it's not relations of opposition. You can't define persons by what they're opposed to, because it begs the question. So the Father is the Father because he's not the Son and not the Spirit. The Spirit is the Spirit because he's not the Father and not the Son. That doesn't tell you who they are. That tells you what they're not. So they're negative statements. And Losky critiques this and says, a relation is a predicate, not a subject. So it's confusing subjects and predicates to say that the Father is the relation that he has with the Son. I am not the relation I have to my dad. That's a property or an attribute about me. That's not who I am as a subject. It's just one of the many predicates that you could say about me. So it's confusing subject and predicate. It's so stupid. But Aquinas says person is relation, persona et relatio. So it makes sense why Tim would argue that way, because in Thomistic theology, the persons are, because of divine simplicity, the relations that they have to the other persons. But that's preposterous. A person is a subject, not a relation. So the Father is not the relation that he has to the Son. The Father is a divine subject of the Father, the cause, the arche, the fount, etc. All of those terms that are hypostatic properties go into defining the persons, not relations of opposition. And that's why when I said it's hypostatic properties that define the person, something very basic to Orthodox and Eastern and Triad and Cappadocian Christology, Tim Gordon had no idea what that even is. What do you mean hypostatic properties? What is that? Relations of origin? What is that? Well, just read the Losky essay and it's all right there. I apologize for that long rant there.
Yeah. I just wanted to quickly clarify. So my understanding that they basically have the only way out of absolute divine simplicity in relations of oppositions, and it's just basically kicking the can down the road.
Yep.
When you critique the ADS position.
Correct.
And that is basically their last resort. And
yeah, well, if you read on the Trinity, Augustine struggles with, and he says, you know, if God is this absolutely simple Neoplatonic definition of simplicity, and he explicitly uses the Plotinian definition of what simplicity is, which is not what the Cappadocians do. He says, how can we distinguish? How is there a real, distinction between Father and Son? And he says, well, maybe we could say that they're not the other, the Father isn't this one and isn't this one. Well, but that's true, but that doesn't really tell you anything about like who they are. And that's also not a relation of opposition, because there's two things that it would be opposed to. Relation of opposition is two. So how can it be a relation of opposition when there's actually the Father and the Son and the Spirit? So that would be triad of opposition, which is just nonsense. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and basically what I wanted to say.
Oh, is that it?
No, I just forgot. 1 second.
Okay. I'll read a super chat here while you're thinking. So we got Nick, if you want to say anything, feel free.
I mean, yeah, to your point about when you're talking about counting by division and stuff like that and how they used to count by division. I mean, there's a paper you probably read by David Leisman. He says we don't count by division. He gives some good examples in that as to why we don't count by division. Like, for example, if you have, like a baseball analogy, if you say 8, there was 8 batters struck out, right? Does that mean that 8 people struck out? Well, no, not necessarily, because there could have been, 2 persons that batted twice, right? And so we're not going to count 2 different things that can be predicated differently necessarily by identity, because that can lead into issues. And then obviously Bo Branson gives his whole analogy with like the gallon of water and stuff like that. If you drop a molecule, is it still a gallon of water? So we see in everyday life, we're not counting by identity, and, in everyday scenarios, right? We still do at times, but it doesn't mean that we always do.
Exactly. And so counting by identity works for certain specific things that you can't kind of put into parts or divide. For example, a logical law or a set, right? It doesn't make any sense to say, half of the law of logic. So things that are abstract or conceptual, you kind of have to count by identity. And this is in medieval philosophy, as Dr. Branson pointed out, this is first and second imposition. But things that are objects or mundane objects, everyday world objects, even the ancient medieval world, they would count by division. But in abstract objects, they would count with identity. So, and I think in the Trinity, you could argue that, well, we're kind of doing both, because we're counting the essence by division, but we're counting the persons by identity. So this is something, of course, that the Muslims this is way too high tier for the Muslims. So they have no idea what you're talking about. But JB says for $10, a ton of heterodox positions are premised on the idea that none of those Orthodox saints or church fathers are better than me. God just picked them and it makes it easy. I think you could argue that. Yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of the Protestant attitude is just like, it's so based on hubris, they don't even realize it. It's like, no, actually, I don't need 2,000 years of church fathers and saints and scholars. I can figure out what the canon is, and I'll read some books, and that'll tell me what the Bible canon is. Let's talk God, $5. Why would Oriental Orthodox have a dogmatic problem with infant baptism if they hold or iconoclasm? I don't think they have a problem with infant baptism, so I'm not sure what you mean. Now, you say they have a problem with iconoclasm. I mean, I think Sneck pointed out several years ago that there is a kind of a tendency amongst Orientals to become more and more iconoclastic and to lose their iconographic traditions. But I'm not sure what you mean by them not believing infant baptism. I thought they did. Birds aren't real, $10. Thank you, Jay. We appreciate you. I appreciate that. I think I'm getting a cold for my birthday. So,
Oh,
trombone, $5. Happy birthday. Does astrology play any role in your spiritual practices? No. Can the energies of the celestial luminaries be called God's energies? No, because anything that would be a created energy is not a divine energy. All of God's energies are uncreated.
sounds very originistic.
Yeah, that does sound like origin. And I mean, if you go back to the church fathers, I mean, they thought the celestial spheres had influence on Earth, but they would be, you know, like the moon, the tides, that kind of a thing. It's not like, you know, the moon is like a deity that's, you know, controlling us and causing women to have periods or something. Huge Jackman, $5. How would you respond to the objection that divine conceptualism conflicts with divine aseity? I don't see why that would be a problem. If God is ase or exists of himself, that really wouldn't have anything to do with whether he's a divine mind who can conceive of things. So I don't understand that objection. You have to flesh it out more. Crypto Crusader, $5. Did Aquinas not know that? I think you're talking about relations of opposition, or did he just think he didn't need to address it? Well, one thing that you have to understand about Aquinas and a lot of the medievals, and people today don't really get this, and I'll let Nick talk. I don't mean to be hogging the microphone, but in the medieval era, in the medieval world, it was actually considered an argument to cite an authority. I mean, I think they had a conception of the fact that authorities could be wrong, but if you're citing Aristotle or Augustine to the medieval world, that's a really strong argument. And so authorities had a lot more power in argumentation than they do nowadays post-Enlightenment. So I think, you know, if you read, say, Summa Contra Gentiles, like volumes 1 or 2 or 3, where Aquinas makes a lot of argumentation about apologetics or about the Trinity and how he thinks that for example, he argues, I'm pretty sure in Summa Contra Gentiles, the Holy Spirit proceeds from the essence, which is a really bad, stupid position, right? But he's forced into that position because of his presupposition about divine simplicity. And when he, in De Veritate, is arguing against John Damascus on the energies, Aquinas says, well, Maimonides says that simplicity can't have any real distinctions or any strong, hard distinctions, because that would mean that there's parts. So he just assumes that distinction entails composition or division. And his source is literally Aristotle and Maimonides. So, I mean, I know people want to exalt Aquinas like he's quasi-infallible, but like, that's just not a very good argument. And as you get older and more mature, I think you'll understand that Aquinas makes a lot of mistakes. And to sort of put these individual people on pedestals as Rome does is just doesn't make sense. So
I literally hear so many like Catholics on TikTok and like being so serious. They'll say that like he's greater than all the church fathers and that he is like, he might even be greater than the apostles. And, like, it's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's really a papal. It's a papal Protestant mindset, right? I mean, it's not accidental to the church that exalted one bishop to be the dude. They're also going to pick and choose the dudes. And the irony here, of course, is that the modern Vatican for the last 100 years, they don't care about Aquinas. They moved past Thomism. Darkimer, $20. Happy birthday, Jay. What's up, Nick? You and Made by Jim Bob were successful in getting me back into church. Well, that's good, man. Great to hear that, Darkimer. Banana up to about $5. How come there's no people calling in? He's great, man. He's like the biggest super chatter of the last month. He sends like hundreds of dollars of super chats. So we love Banana up the butt.
Yeah, brother.
And by the way, is that a reference to TJ Kirk? I'm assuming that's what that means, Banana up the butt, because he famously, you know, supposedly did that to prove something about atheism. I don't know what it was. It was gross. But how come no callers are calling in to disprove Yakub and that he manifested Wigzantium? That's because they can't. Because the transcendental argument for Yakub is so strong. That's why. You'll never see him call in. What's up, man? Go ahead. Enchanted,
Okay,
did you have any last comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a brief point. Mm-hmm. It seems that the Roman Catholic view, they have collapsed energies partially into the essence,
and into person, and into person,
and it's completely incoherent.
Yep.
And maybe someone, you know, from the Orthodox sphere could, you know, make a video or something to actually, you know, deconstruct the Roman Catholic view and show how all these attributes that don't match up.
Well, bro, we've been making those videos. We've been making those videos for 10 years. So go back to my series on that, man. Yeah, I'm not dissing you. I'm just saying, like, we've been making those videos. They don't care. Like, they don't, like, the Roman Catholic apologetics, by the way, is dying. Like, it's resorted now to, like, TikTok, just gibberish. That's it. Like, all Roman Catholic apologetics is TikTok gibberish and Trent Horn's, you know, low tier videos. I mean, they're pretty much cooked, man. They have totally just had disaster after disaster in the last 6 months, whether it's Trent Doherty and all the, we were the same as the Muslims, God, like, all that was a massive flop. What was the last debate? Alex Soren, Yossi flopped bad. I mean, they're cooked, dude. All they have is the low tier. All they have is the lowest common denominator, low tier stuff. That's all they do. Miss Roberts, $5. What is the difference between Orthodox sects? I mean, there's not really Orthodox sects. There's a few groups that are like small groups that claim to be, you know, true Orthodox, but I don't even think that's even comparable, because that's just like a few thousand people in the world. I don't even think that's comparable to Protestant denominations. So, but I wouldn't, we're not arguing that Orthodoxy is true because no one claims to be a sectarian. We're arguing that Protestantism's own ecclesiology allows for multiple sects. Orthodox ecclesiology doesn't allow for that, even though there are some groups that claim to be Orthodox sects.
Yeah, and the only way these small little groups like Genuine Orthodox and stuff like that are growing is just because people are going to the church thinking it's just regular Orthodox. They don't know that it's like a schismatic sect.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, so as somebody who's wanting to get into online debating, I just want to know how would I determine if I'm engaging in Christian apologetics? Like, if I'm debating, like, let's say a secularist, you know, about you know, the existence of God, would that be considered engaging in Christian apologetics?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I would say you got to be an Orthodox Christian. Like, I know there are apologists that are Protestant and Catholic and all that, but I mean, I can't support or, you know, condone apologetics that isn't Orthodox.
Gotcha.
So I would say a person needs to become Orthodox first, and then kind of go through catechesis. And usually, you know, people need a time period to not, you know, immediately be debating when they're a catechumen. There might be some exception to that, but usually it doesn't work out good. Okay, here we go. God, what's up?
We're gonna get some good arguments now.
Here we go. We got Reddit live. What's up, man? God can't connect. I would think you would have omnipotent powers if you. But God doesn't have a good cell connection, apparently. And I'm not being blasphemous because this isn't actually God, by the way.
Of course.
Let's see. We'll try somebody else. All right, we got all these Orthodox guys. Is there anybody who disagrees? So every time I do a live stream, which I don't mind it, it's just because it's no more, and Muslims don't come, atheists, it's all just piles up with all the Ortho bros, which is fine. But it's like, does anybody in the chat disagree? There's still like almost 20 people. Give me an emoji or something if you disagree, and I'll bring you up. Okay. Cardicay? He disagrees. What's up? Cardicay, what's up? I'm mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah. I had a question related to tag.
Okay.
So I was watching like a debate with Dr. Alex Malpass, and I was a bit confused about why tag presents like a better alternative to, let's say, just taking things as an assumption or taking things as metaphysically assumed. So, for example, regularity of nature versus just assuming the reduction happens.
Well,
like, why is the better thing to do? Yep.
I mean, you can't come to a debate and say, well, I just want to assume it. I mean, can I come to the debate and say, well, I just assume God exists, so debate's over?
Right, but like it was more so why is that a better alternative? Or what does it solve exactly?
Well, if you read David Hume, for example, he argues that if you're an empiricist, you can't prove or justify induction. So the solution to that, to just say, well, I just assume it. I mean, you don't see why that's philosophical nonsense to just say, I just assume it. I mean, that's the thing in question.
Yeah, well, right. But so I guess what I'm trying to understand is why does assuming the Christian God help explain that better?
Well, because if God exists and if he's provident, then that explains why there's regularity in nature because of divine providence.
Right.
In a world where God exists, where there is a creator and a created order with intentionality and purpose, it makes sense why there would be regularity in nature. In a world where it's pure chaos and materialism, there is no justification for the regularity of nature.
So by makes sense, what do you mean in that context?
That it's justified and coherent. It makes sense in a sense of it being purposeful and intentional because the world has order, the world has telos, purpose, and it has an end. In a world without all of that, it doesn't make sense. It's incoherent.
Okay. So you're saying that it's nested in another criteria of, let's say, the world being more teleological?
Being what?
Teleological, like having a purpose?
Yeah, I'm saying all of those metaphysical ideas that are part and parcel with a Christian metaphysic make sense of induction and the regularity of nature and thus the possibility of knowledge. But the other worldview, where there's none of that, it doesn't make sense and there is no justification. That's a pretty strong argument, I would say.
Right.
So it's an argument comparing worldviews on the question of induction. That is the argument.
Right. So, okay, I guess, pardon me, but I'm still a bit confused on.
Yeah,
so it makes more sense because it's more coherent, like overall.
Yeah, there's coherence and incoherence. Correct. The argument here is partly hinging on coherence. Correct.
Okay,
but it's
so
not
then
just
would you
it's
say
not just any kind of
coherence
it's not just any kind of coherence. It's coherence in regard to something that is so fundamental to knowledge that it's a precondition of knowledge. You couldn't have knowledge if there weren't the principle of induction, right? So in other words, it's not just denying any kind of thing, it's denying something so fundamental that to deny it would make knowledge impossible, and that's why it's a strong argument.
So you're saying that without those assumptions or without this worldview, knowledge itself is not really possible?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
that is the argument.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly, right there. That is the so it's an argument about worldviews.
Okay, one small question on this. So
sure.
Wouldn't that still assume like coherence theory before any of your assumptions or any of your?
No, coherence theory is a secular epistemology that treats every belief as foundational. So it's a form of foundationalism that treats everything as a foundational belief. It's just it only differs from foundationalism in the sense that there's not specific beliefs that are foundational. So it's not coherence theory in a secular epistemic sense. I'm arguing that the Christian metaphysic as a whole is coherent and gives a place for and a basis for a justification for induction, whereas the atheist metaphysic and worldview does not. So no, it is not relying on some secular coherence theory, but it is relying on all kinds of things, sure. But we're arguing that every position relies on things. So the argument is premised on the atheist view relies on induction, the Christian view relies on induction. Only the Christian worldview as a whole can make sense of induction, whereas the atheist worldview makes induction and knowledge impossible. It's not an argument that's saying that we don't assume things and you do. The argument is arguing everyone assumes things.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, great questions. I appreciate that. I mean, I welcome the, and I thank you for being, civil. And a lot of these people are not very civil when it comes to this topic. But feel free to interject, Nick, if you'd like to. By the way, everybody's being very generous. Thank you. I'm going to share the super chats with Nick, so appreciate all that.
Wow, what a guy, man.
Yeah, we're doing very, very nice on super chats already. We got Chad Nerd, or excuse me, Free Reign says, my Ricci family, like Christina Ricci, Saint Catherine de Ricci, who was a histrionic, hysterical woman, Matteo Lorenzo Ricci, my great grandfather was or with King Umberto, stood up to the Venetians who infested the Vatican. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know there was a Ricci drama opposing the Venetians. Bootman, $20. Happy birthday, Jay. Your work was critical for me to stay orthodox during a very spiritual low point. Yeah, just persevere. I think everybody, you're going to hit spiritual low points no matter who you are in your journey. Just try to stay, consistent with attending the liturgy. Croatian, $5. Can you explain the difference between being and person? Can you point me to resources on this idea, maybe contemporary stuff, Orthodox theologians? I mean, the best contemporary theologians are like, you could read Florovsky, where he talks about the energies in some of his writings, but Dr. David Bradshaw's books, Aristotle East and West, and the Divine Energies book that he has, a separate little book of essays. Read anything by Vladimir Losky is good. But, I mean, being is a very generic term in philosophy and in patristics, and it really kind of is synonymous with existence or, ontology. It's just kind of it's used in different ways. When the church fathers or Palimaster people speak of God's being, that's called an energy as well. So God's existence is an energy. So person is subject or agent in Orthodox Christology.
Yeah, and I actually did an interview with Dr. David Bradshaw on my channel around a year ago. If you can check that out as well, it might help. I think we talked about person and being in there a little bit, but we just talked about some of the major objections and what it is to understand a little bit better. So whoever that person was.
Yeah, so you could check out Nick's interview, and I also have an interview with Dr. Bradshaw as well from 4 or 5 years ago on Essence Energy Distinction too. So I think you guys would like that. Dan Good, $5. Dan Pod, $5. Quick question: do you believe in Actus Purus, and if not, why? Yeah. So John Damascus and Gregory Palamas, they talk about God as in his essence, in terms of his in his eternal existence. God is, in a sense, you could say, pure act in contrast to the created order. But you cannot reduce the divine persons or the divine energies to pure act. And the reason for that, first and foremost, is that we believe in apophatic theology. So to call the divine essence pure act would, number one, be not apophatic. It would be a cataphatic attribution to the divine essence. And also a divine being that is reduced to pure act, especially if you reduce the persons to pure act, like Rome does. You can't have one person incarnate in time and space and engage in kenosis or self-limitation, as Philippians 2 says, and maintain a God that is reducible to pure act. So that's one. Also, the God that is pure act doesn't create, because pure actuality must, according to Aristotle, always have something else that it actualizes. And Aristotle's reasoned this out to mean dyad, right? The first actualizer must always have something other than himself that he eternally actualizes. Otherwise, what is he actualizing? And that's what led Aristotle to a dyad. And if you read Basil's Hexameron, he critiques this as a nonsense position, and that's why we don't reduce God to pure act. But there is a way of speaking of God that, for example, if you read the first 5 pages of St. Maximus's 200 chapters, he says you can call God first cause and first act in contrast to the created order. St. Gregory Nazianzus says the exact same thing. He says, in the sense of the Trinity being contrasted to the creation, the Trinity is the monarch of creation. You can't take the economic attributions and import those into the intra-Trinitarian life. For example, you can't call the divine essence the first cause of the Trinity. You can't call the entire triad the first cause of the Trinity. Only the Father in the intra-Trinitarian life is the first cause. So you see how this terminology gets confused between economic predication of God and intra-Trinitarian life predication of God. And this is a common mistake the Roman Catholics make, not just with the Filioque, but with naming God in general. And again, first 5 pages, 200 chapters, Maximus explicitly makes this distinction between two ways of naming God: God in contrast to creatures, and God in the intertrinitarian life.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the times people like notice pure act, like it just the first thing people think is, okay, he has passive potency and active potency. Does he have any passive at all? Well, I mean, obviously we don't think that like in accordance to creation, he doesn't change how we do it anyway. There's no like, there's none of his essential properties are gonna stop being essential properties. He doesn't have things like accidental properties, and a lot of times when people talk about pure act, that's all they mean. They don't kind of take into account everything that it has to do with.
Also, there's a thing that people years ago took me out of context to say that I was saying that God is determined or affected by creatures, because we were talking about passive potency. And what I was saying was not in the sense of like in himself. No, God is not changed or acted upon by creatures. However, there is a great essay. I think it's Bradshaw's longer essay on the concept of divine energies, where there's a section where he critiques the Thomistic and Augustinian notion of, if God is reducible to his essence, then you have a problem with prayer, because prayer in divine revelation, God does react to creatures and to prayer. And there's a really powerful critique that Bradshaw does of ADS, where he says, if God is this, there isn't an interaction to prayer. So what's the solution to this? Well, Bradshaw says, in the economia, God condescends to will to react to creatures in terms of their prayers. And hence, if you read the book of Amos, for example, God says to Amos, if you had not prayed for Israel, I would have destroyed it. But since you did intercede for Israel, I'm not going to destroy it. That means God condescends to will to react to creatures. It does not mean the divine essence is affected or changed by creatures. And they took me out of context when all I did was repeat what Bradshaw argued. So Dyer says that God has passive potency and he's changed by creatures.
It's funny because I literally get people like in my live, probably Muslims all the time, that are like, Jay doesn't believe in pure act. He thinks God has, passive potency and all this. I'm like, I can almost guarantee you're clearing them out of context. Like, let's be fair.
No. So if you read Pino's dissertation, right, he says Palamos does say that you can speak of God as pure act, meaning that there's no unrealized, like deficiency or lack in God. And that's still in contrast to the temporal, created, finite, limited, lacking things of the created order. But you can't say the divine essence is pure act, which is what Thomism says. For example, Actus Purus, Thomas says God is, in his essence, absolutely identical to pure actuality. That is very problematic for Orthodox theology and for any kind of Trinitarian theology. It really negates the Trinity. Not just that, it also makes the incarnation impossible. And you'll notice every time I brought this up with Roman Catholic theologians and Thomists, when they call in and I say, let's say you're right. Fine. God is absolutely simple essence and reducible to, isomorphically identical to pure actuality. Now explain to me how one hypostasis of pure actuality enters into time and space and willfully limits himself, a la the kenosis passage of Philippians 2. They have no idea what I'm talking. They don't know.
Yeah.
Because they do their metaphysics irrespective of Christology. Orthodox theology is the reverse. Our metaphysics is based on Trinity and Christology, not metaphysics that then determines the Trinity. That's all Thomism right there. Octavian, $20. If a Mormon and a Calvinist walk into a Catholic church, will the imam give them communion? Happy birthday. If they're at the churches in Germany, probably. Banana up to butt, $50. Thank you for being such a generous, wealthy super chatter, $50. I wonder if the Muslim debates, I'm wondering with these Muslim debates, if you guys ever bring up the diacritical dots issues in the 7 different readings. I'm curious to know how they would respond to that. Diacritical dots actually change the letters in Arabic into different words and meanings. I'm not familiar with this argument. Have you heard this argument?
Yeah, I think he's referring to the fact they have like different variants of the text, where like some will say that like I created something, or some will say like you created something, and so it's clearly referring to different subjects. And so there's some textual variants that are considered like major textual variants that they don't know exactly which one it's supposed to be. So the whole one Quran argument kind of falls apart.
Oh, so this is even after Uthman, right?
Yeah, it's after Uthman burned them all. Yeah.
With this, remember when there was some drama over, was it Muhammad Hijab, when he was admitting that the Quran isn't free from textual variants? Remember that a few years ago? There was like a
Was
big.
it him? I don't know if it was him or Ali Dawah.
Maybe it was Ali Dawah. One of those guys, admitted this, and it was like a huge deal, and they were all freaking out.
I mean, it's true if you actually are being honest. I mean, there's obvious variants there, unless you just decide to stick with one specific variant and say that's the only one. But I don't think there's any justification for that.
Okay. Lean $3. Happy birthday, Jay. What order of books is the best to read the Bible so that it isn't confusing? Honestly, I mean, I would start with Genesis. I mean, it's going to be difficult, but you really can't understand the New Testament without, the Torah. So it is really important to read the Torah. I would get Orthodox Study Bible and just, start from the beginning and, read all the notes because it's going to help you. Sergius, $50, man. You guys are being so generous. Thank you so much. He says, happy birthday, big dog. Happy birthday to you, man. Even though it's not your birthday. Or it could be. It could be. How about Merry Christmas? Since technically it's still kind of Orthodox Christmas.
There you
go. All right, let's see who's next. Any disagreeers, by the way? We still got 20 people in here. Give me an emoji if you. Okay, so here's somebody. Amanda disagrees. What's up, Amanda? You gotta unmute. What's up, Amanda? Amanda, unmute.
That shirt is so real right now.
Unmute, chick. Even though it's not a dude. I mean, I guess you could be a dude named Amanda. Are you there? Did you?
Hey, you guys hear me?
Amanda's a dude. What's up?
Sorry, man. My wife made this profile for us.
I'm just kidding. What's up, man?
I wanted to give you a little bit of pushback, I guess, for your birthday.
Okay.
Or it says it's your birthday. We just recently left Baptist church. I grew up fundamental Baptist. But we've been attending an Antiochian Orthodox church.
Okay.
And certain parts of the liturgy, I noticed when they're talking about the Theotokos, they mention save us or save me. I guess the last little bit hanging up on me as a Protestant would be like, how could you argue that that's not like a statement to her to save us?
Yeah, so it's just like when Paul says to Timothy, if you act godly and are faithful, you will save those around you, right? It's not saying that Timothy is the ultimate savior. Sometimes this in theology is called middle salvation. And it just means, just like with Amos, right? If you read the book of Amos, Amos saved Israel. Oh, I guess Amos is replacing Jesus. No, it just means that God was using that means to save Israel, right? So in the same way, the Theotokos saved us in that she's the mother of God. She's the mother of, Jesus, the divine person of the Son, in the sense that she gave him his human nature and that she acquiesced to let it be done according to thy will. So she acquiesced, and in that sense, she saved us. Not that she is the ultimate cause of salvation. She's the proximate cause of salvation, just like your Monica prays for St. Augustine, right? So his mom, St. Monica, saved Augustine through her prayers, not as the ultimate cause. That's all it means. Anything you want to say on that, Nick?
I mean, no, I agree. That's what I was going to bring up, the prayer example too. If I pray for someone to go to church, right, and then we would have to say as Christians that God is actually hearing our prayers and our prayers can be efficacious. So if I pray for someone to go to church and somehow those prayers affect him in a way to go to church, he goes to church and ends up being saved. Well, my prayers saved him. Am I the savior though? Do I, like you said, replace God? No. God used me as a tool, as an instrument to pray. It's like, as an example, my priest gave one time. It's like, imagine like God is running a hot dog stand, right? And he's giving out hot dogs. These hot dogs are salvation. But the only way that you can get one is you got to walk by the hot dog stand. So he's giving them out either way. Nothing changes in him. But the only thing that changes is whether or not you receive one, which is about if you take the hot dog. Now, that doesn't mean that you cause your salvation or say you told a friend, go to the hot dog stand. You saved them, because if you didn't tell them to go to the hot dog stand, they wouldn't have gone. But the ultimate salvation is what comes from the actual hot dog stand owner is giving it out in the first place.
Exactly. Anonymous, $10. Jay, you argued that Unum Sanctum says all Catholics are temporally subject to the Pope to be saved. Correct. There's a forged bull spread by King Philip that the Pope claimed feudal control of France. Boniface denied this and its claims. Now, I hope you're not saying that Unum Sanctum is a forged bull, because it's not. In fact, Unum Sanctum is still cited in Denzinger, so that's total nonsense. But, and by the way, Pius IX, as we argued multiple times in Lamentabili and the Syllabus of Errors, restates that you still have to believe in the temporal supremacy doctrine. All the way up until Vatican I, that's stated by the papacy as still dogmatic and binding. So the way that you worded this is a little ambiguous, because I don't know if you mean that Unum Sanctum is a forged bull, because I've never heard a Roman Catholic say this. It's still cited in Catholic dogmatic authoritative sources. Or if you're saying there's a separate bull that is claiming feudal control. And let's say it's not, but let's say for the sake of argument, you're correct. Okay, well then why is Pius IX citing and reaffirming a forged bull, right? So that would mean that Pius IX made a huge error. He didn't even know his own documents in his own church history. Nico, $3. Jay, Cradle Orthodox. I went Protestant, but I'm now back to Orthodoxy. I got an Orthodox calendar about feast days. I've been fasting Wednesday, Friday, etc. Is the non-Lent Easter fast something that you do? I mean, I have medical issues, and so we do fast, but it's not exactly the same as everyone's fast. But you should take up fasting and all that with your spiritual father, because that's going to be determined between you and him. I don't give spiritual advice to people. Marco, $10. Jay, I'm Orthodox. I've been hearing an argument that the Orthodox Church is not universal because there is an MP schism. How would you argue against this? Well, this is an easy one right away. If a schism between patriarchates means that the church is no longer universal, then the Roman Catholic Church is not universal, because there were schisms amongst the patriarchates in the first millennium. So if, let's say for the sake of argument, the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, is the church of the first 1,000 years, and if schisms amongst patriarchates is a disqualifier, then you just disqualified Rome as being the church of the first 1,000 years. Nick, you have any comments?
I mean, yeah, I agree. To say that this agreement itself is going to make it, not the true church, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because we believe that obviously they themselves are not infallible, but the councils themselves are going to be deemed infallible. So them disagreeing really has nothing to do with anything. We've had individuals who have been in certain seats who have been corrupted and been bad. It doesn't prove or disprove anything. Men are fallible.
Yeah, I mean, in the Orthodox conception, there's many patriarchates and bishoprics that have gone into schism, and that's a feature of anybody's church, whether you're Orthodox or Roman Catholic. So really, a schism occurring amongst patriarchates doesn't disprove or disprove anything. However, you could argue that the schism of the Roman papacy and its patriarchate against all the others seems to indicate maybe that Rome was in error. But Marcos, no, we did that one. Yeah, let's go to the next call. Waffle.
Hi there. I was wondering if you had any recommendations of books on the Holy Spirit.
I mean, I would read Losky's works on the Holy Spirit, because Procession of the Holy Spirit that we just referenced earlier by Vladimir Losky. You can get that PDF. That's a good one for Orthodox theology. Alexander, what's up? What's up, Alexander?
Hi, Jay. Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
I have two questions for you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So the first one is regarding the end times. So what do you believe when Jesus comes back and steps foot on the ground somewhere in Jerusalem? What is the order of events that will happen?
Again, you could read or you could watch the video essays from Jordanville Monastery called Apostasy and Antichrist on YouTube for a fuller treatment of this. But I mean, we don't believe that he literally has to like fly down and stand on the Mount of Olives. I mean, he may do that, but I mean, really just the Orthodox conception is that you have an apostasy, antichrist, persecution of the church, and then conversion of the Jews, and then the return of Christ. And then you have the resurrection and great white throne judgment. So for us, it's a pretty clear, simple process. We don't get into all this like John Hagee end time speculation stuff.
Yeah, I noticed like there's not much details, obviously, but I was wondering if maybe Orthodoxy provides like more in detail, like first this will happen, second this, third, like. But I understand.
Yeah. So I mean, I think like if you read this Elders and the Saints, they point out that as the church gets closer to the end of the world, the church will have a better sense of the order of these events. But as of presently, we don't fully know the exact order of the events. But the closest that you could get, I mean, there are some good Orthodox commentaries. My godfather printed a 3-volume commentary on the Apocalypse from James Jordan that he helped edit. It's called, just look up Dean Arnold Revelation Commentary. That's a good one. Days of Vengeance by David Chilton's pretty good. Anyway. Derps, $10. Great work, gentlemen. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
40 Crush, $5. You guys should check out Rob Christian. He has many videos and streams against Islam, particularly the Muslim academic sources and the dot variants. Are you familiar with Rob Christian?
I believe he's someone on TikTok. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Who disagrees? All right, we still got 20 people in here. Give me some kind of an emoji or something if you disagree. Okay. Real Wigga disagrees. What's up? Got to unmute.
I really understand this right now.
Unmute, Jay. Unmute.
You unmute. Dude. Okay, what's on your mind?
Well, it's kind of a personal matter, and considering you're the wisest person that I could ask this question, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay. Are you trolling? I already did text some.
No. I'm serious about this. I'm serious.
A personal matter with me and you, or me or you? What do you mean?
No. My life when it comes to it. I have a fork in the road in life, and I don't know whether I should, go where my heart is or choose
follow your heart, dude. Just follow your heart, bro.
I'm just kidding. What's the problem?
Well, I'm really into mixed martial arts. I mean, I've been training it since I'm 15, and it's as if I have this this hard choice to make. Either I go full send it, and in the process I lose my marginally higher intelligence and I become retarded, because what are the consequences of fully fledged professional fighter?
What's it called? CT?
CTE.
Yeah.
CTE, yeah. There is no cure pretty much, because the protein tau builds up in your brain after getting hit. Like every small hit creates like a mini concussion in your brain, which stacks up over time, and it's like really damaging. And it's as if I have this Faustian bargain, like, hey, trade my marginally higher intelligence for something that I really enjoy doing.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
All right, I'm gonna tell you this. Now being over age 17 myself, in middle age, I would not trade my brain for some brawls in my 20s and 30s. So as you get older, I think you're gonna want to not have CTE. That would be me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, the thing is, I'm not looking at it from the perspective of a brawler. I'm more of a tactician. I've watched all the greats. If you know who I'm talking about, GSP, Demetrius Johnson's, people who are legit tacticians. They don't go there to brawl, lose brain cells.
Yeah, but I mean, even still, I don't know if it'd be worth it, man. Honestly.
I understand it. Yeah, that's also what I was thinking. I mean, I've lost so many opportunities in the last couple of years just because of this deadlock in my life. Like, hey, should I pursue this or should I, go down the aviation path?
Me personally, Me personally, I just wouldn't get hit, but like that's just me though. You might be different.
Yeah, so
I don't
just
know.
like do it perfectly and never get punched, and you're good, man.
That'd be all right.
I like Nick's plan. Anthony, $1. I meant King Philip spread a forged bull, called Deum Time, that claimed a feudal control over France to deceive French Catholics against the Pope. No Pope ever used the bull to support the papacy. Please learn the full context. Well, what does that have to do with unum sanctum and the contradiction in Roman Catholic dogma post Vatican II? So you can get snarky with me and tell me to learn the full context, but your forged bull has nothing to do with my argument. So you need to learn the context. Contemporary Compendium says $5 and says, here's some money. Thank you. Anthony, why don't you call in, since you seem to know everything about setting us straight on papal history? Do you want to address the actual argument, or you just want to bring up irrelevant papal bulls that have nothing to do with unum sanctum? So please let me know, Anthony. I'd like for you to call in, and the link is in the show description. Who's in the chat and disagrees? Please raise your hand. Here we go. Fedorov. Where's all these people in the normal streams? And maybe Nick brought them all.
I guess.
They want a piece of Nick. What's up, man? I'm mute.
Hey. What's up, man? Can you
What's
hear me?
up? Yep.
Nice. Dude, I wanted to talk about the papacy, you know, Jay. Are you up for that? A little bit?
When am I not up to talk about the papacy, dude?
Yeah, exactly, man. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, man. I wanted to talk about it more from the logical point of view, you know?
Okay. Perfect.
As you know, in Eastern Orthodoxy, there is like this thing as this 3-tier model. Like, if you can call it a model, like you have the local synods, and then you have the regional, right? So in the local, you have when you have an issue, which is on the local level, for example, multiple priests or clergy and whatnot, you know, and if it has to be resolved, there is the bishop, right, who is the head of this local synod, and he resolves, right? He is responsible for a resolution. Now, when you go one level up, on the second level, you have the regional level.
Yeah, so you're going to argue that the regional should be reflected into the universal. This is a Lofton argument that he made like 5 years ago. Is that what you're arguing?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, if you would say that it's Lofton's. So if we follow this trail of logic, right, and we go up to the universal level, wouldn't you say that there must be a head, just as there is a head on the local and the regional level?
Well, what you are missing that is consistently argued in the New Testament and in the patristic period is that there is a head, and his name is Jesus Christ, and the purpose of the Holy Spirit is it's the Holy Spirit that is his earthly manifestation of that headship. So it's the Roman Catholic position that seems to not grasp that the Holy Spirit is who does that function in time and space, and they think it has to be replaced with a juridical high priest of the Old Testament living person. So you're actually moving retrograde into the Old Testament to think that you need to have a living high priest to solve the problems, when why wasn't this established at Nicaea? Like, why, in other words, why don't we just move the logic a little further and say, okay, the Bishop of Rome literally just tells every single bishop and person in the world what to do in every case, and get rid of the synods in general?
Yeah. I'm gonna respond to that, you know, to the second one. Just going to the first, of course, you know, Jesus Christ, he's the ultimate head of the body, right? He's the source of everything, of all unity, of all truth. Yeah, of course. But that doesn't mean that Christ has not given us a hierarchy, right? Because if we do this reductionist move,
it's not a reductionist move. You're just
the head,
yeah, but the thing you're assuming that you're assuming the thing in question, though, because I'm asking you. So in other words, the logic of where we take this models of hierarchy is going to depend on what we think Jesus did and what he established. You think that he established Peter as the sort of arbiter of that. And I'm saying, okay, why didn't Peter act that way? And why didn't they accept this in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century when that should have been the logic of it? Do you believe that the papacy was always there from day one, as Vatican I says, or do you think it developed?
Peter, of course, in Eastern Orthodoxy, there is also the belief that Peter was given the keys, and he is the head, right? He is the point of unity of the apostles.
Was
right?
Vatican I there in the beginning, or did it develop?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you believe the Vatican
yeah,
I view was there or developed?
Yeah, I understand. So if we think about the papacy like as a dogma of the church, which was placed in Vatican I as a dogma, right, as a definitive dogma. Now, if we take it just as a normal dogma, we also have other dogmas too, like for example the Trinity, right, or for example we have.
Was the papacy there at the beginning, or did it develop Vatican I style?
I'm sorry, what?
For the third time, the Vatican I definition of the papacy, was it there in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century, or did it develop?
Well, I would say it was better. It was more fully exposited, right? So there is a fuller exposition of this doctrine. It's not like the way we see. For example, if we go to pre-Nicaea, right, we don't see the exact definition of the Trinity in like the year 100. We see an implicit view of it, but we don't really see the full.
So it's doctrinal development.
Council of Nicaea. What do you say?
Was it so? It's doctrinal development.
Yeah, I mean, if you understand by doctrinal development that we just develop doctrine out of thin air, that's not what it's meant, right?
No. I know that you don't think that. You think it's. I mean, do you agree with the Newman definition that it's a seed that grows into a tree?
Not even that. It's more of the exposition, like a fuller exposition of it, just like the Trinity.
So basically, it was there for all those centuries, but the Pope didn't use that authority until many centuries later. That's the Ibarra route sometimes that he takes.
No, it's not that the Pope never used it. It's that.
Okay, can you give some examples of the Vatican I style papacy in the first millennium?
Yeah. So, for example, Saint Pope Leo's claims, which he made about Peter, about the church. Many scholars actually say that in Leo.
Hold on, many scholars. So, but where does that teach Vatican I? Because a lot of those phrases can be read in an Orthodox way.
Okay, so phrases like, for example, that no pagan faithlessness will ever overcome this Roman see. Like, how can this be read?
And the same honorifics that are used for the other sees. Do you agree with that or no?
Okay, so you're talking about plural language now?
What?
Plural language, like
honorifics, like Alex Thorne just brought up with Yasi, like Ubi brought up with Ibarra.
Yeah, I've seen the debate of it, but
okay. So how do you know which honorifics apply and which ones don't?
Okay, so honorifics, I see when you apply honorifics, right? I see honorifics as when one person says something about another person. I don't think a honorific is when you say that about yourself. At most, it would be arrogance, right? If you
okay,
say.
So well, how do you know that the only honorifics that count are the ones that you say about yourself?
No, I didn't say that. I said
that's what you said.
These are not honorifics. Honorifics are when somebody says.
Okay, how do you know that that's the definition of when you do and don't take it? You just invented a new definition of, these are the ones that count. It's when someone says it about, when you say it about yourself. That's when it counts. Because Leo says this about Rome, so that's when it counts.
Okay, yeah. So because if you speak honorifically for your own self, that's arrogance, right? That would be basically arrogance, right? You're just saying something about yourself, which you're actually not. So at most, you are going to say that Leo was being arrogant and he was deceiving himself. Is that what you're going to say?
I don't have a problem. Well, again, first of all, I don't know that you've yet to show that because he uses those terminologies, they're equivalent to Vatican I. That would be you retroactively reading it back into it, which hasn't been demonstrated yet. And that's why you have to go to these honorifics to say that, well, it only counts when it sounds like Vatican I, when it's the guy saying it about himself. But again, how do you know that that's the case? You're just assuming the thing in question. Why is that the thing? You made a qualification, a criteria on the spot to make that count. But how do we know that that's like, so if the council says it about the emperor later on in the Seventh Ecumenical Council, why does that one not count?
Okay, yeah, exactly. Because he's saying that. What did he even say to the emperor? Like that the emperor.
The gates of hell will not prevail against the emperor.
I'm sorry, what?
The gates of hell will not prevail against the emperor and the empire.
Okay, I would need a definitive quote on that.
These have all been brought up in the debates. You said you just watched these debates. These have been brought up in all those debates.
I was gonna say, this is funny. It's literally what Alex is bringing up in the debate.
What?
This is what Alex Soren brought up in the debate, and you said you watched it and the UB debate.
Okay, yeah, but I haven't taken notice of like everything they said. Like, I have to rewatch.
Okay, so these are the honorifics. Yeah, go ahead.
I will take note of it. I'm just gonna say that you know, it's again like flowery language. You could say because someone else is saying that to the emperor.
You made up this criterion. So how do you know that the only ones that count are when you say it for yourself? How do you know that?
Because it would be arrogance, and it would just inflate your
So
ego.
again, that's your criteria that you've invented ad hoc, and I'm asking you: is there anywhere in Catholic theology or in your magisterial documents that tells you that that's the principle?
Okay, so yeah,
is there
in theology, right?
Is there in anywhere in magisterial documents? Is there a thing that tells you that's the criteria?
Okay, but it doesn't have to be in every magisterial.
Is there any magisterial document that tells you that's the criteria when it counts?
Okay, I want to say this real quick, right?
Okay, so no answer.
No, that's a no.
No, I do have an answer. I just
is there? No, you're not answering. Is there in the magisterium any clear, identifiable epistemic criterion or principle for that?
Yes, and I am going to say it. And it is that in theology, right, in the Catholic theology and even in Eastern Orthodox.
Okay, where is this? What magisterial document are you citing?
Well, I'm citing the fullness of the faith, which was.
So the fullness of the faith is a magisterial document. Which one is this? Where's the fullness of faith document? Can I read that?
Okay, no, it's not a single document.
Oh, okay. So name one. Name a document. Name any document.
It is the fullness of.
Name any document.
Okay, can I just make?
No.
I just make this point?
That's crazy.
We're done.
But that's literally
we're not
what
going to go
Alex
anywhere
brought
other
up.
than. Yeah, go ahead.
And it's funny because if you watch the Alex debate, you'll see that Alex, he literally like predicted what he'd say too. If you actually watch him, he said, "I know he's going to bring up honorifics, so here's some." So if you actually watch the debate, that was one of the first main parts.
Exactly. And he went through multiple honorifics. And by the way, there's more honorifics than Alex even mentioned. For example, Basil's many honorifics in his letters that I pointed out in a podcast 5 years ago, where he talks about the Church of Antioch being the head of the entire body, all the graces flow from the head to the rest of the church, blah blah blah. And he says Rome was worthless in the Meletian Schism. Now, if I bring that to Roman Catholic, none of that counts. None of it counts. FDA, did you want to say something about this?
Yeah, it's a point that I made before with Pope Leo, for example. So if the Council of Chalcedon accepts something from Pope Leo, what do the Roman Catholics say? Oh, well, you see, he has supreme authority over councils. And if a council doesn't accept or is called outside of Rome, they say, well, it's not a legitimate council. That's obviously the
but I think, it's funny because he came on saying he wanted to talk about the epistemic logical issue. And the problem was that as we dig into the weeds, it turns out actually it's just the Roman Catholic position that is the logical position. Okay, but we're asking you, where in your system do you get the epistemic principle? And he says, well, the system tells you the principle by the system. Okay, where? What's the magisterial document that tells me this clearly? Because remember, they have a system that's grounded on magisterium. And that's a fixed set body of propositions and doctrines. Now, it is debatable what makes that up. But that Roman Catholicism is based on magisterial statements and documents, isn't in debate. So we know that's their principle. That's their epistemic go-to thing. And when we actually asked, remember the Trent Horn thing? When I asked Trent this, and Trent finally in a video tried to address it, he said, oh, canon law, which is fallible, by the way, in their view, canon law tells us that it's magisterial and binding when it's manifest that it is so.
So how do we know?
So in other words, a circle. So exactly. The thing in question is the thing in question. Or the thing in question is answered by just restating what's in question. Skate Monkey. How do you know where I find good material on? I don't. Well, I mean, you could look at RFK's stuff. That's probably a lot more acceptable to a lot of people than But I have a talk on Jonas Salk's book, Survival of the Wisest. So that's what convinced me. I just read his own book. But Nick, do you have any other comments on Roman Catholic papal magisterial claims?
I mean, I just think that the point is that it's arbitrary. Most of these things are arbitrary. Like when you ask them for the claims in the first millennium, I mean, we don't see them there. When you ask them for the justification that you find, like Alex did in the debate, what's justification for how we know whether or not he's speaking infallibly in the first millennium? We don't find that anywhere. We don't find any sort of criteria there. We don't find anybody speaking about any criteria. So it's all kind of arbitrary, and it's like looking at things from a view of a lens of the future. It's like kind of like a what's it called?
It's an
like
anachronistic
reading. It's like presentism, basically.
Yeah, anachronism, where you read back into the history of the present.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought about this. So it's similar to certain Protestant heresies, right? So if that's exactly what Roman Catholicism is, don't you think it would have been that important that it was spelled out in the details?
Yeah, well, I mean, why do we need 18? Yeah,
we've got to wait 1,800
years before we get. Yeah,
then we'll get our magic glasses from Vatican I that we dug up, and then we'll be able to see.
Well, just look at.
But if that is exactly what the church is like, so you have to quote mine and go through all this stuff. Use a Vatican I principle that doesn't come up till 1,800 years later, 1,900, and that's your position. I mean, think about that. It's exactly the same as dispensationalists or any Protestant heresy. Is that we just have to wait 1,800 years?
Well, they're just like just like James White trying to say, no, actually, the church fathers see justification by faith alone. And let me find you a few quotes where it says, we're saved by faith, we're saved by grace. See, that's the Protestant doctrine. So they do the same thing as like James White reading the church fathers, where it's like, let me craft out of the church fathers with a bunch of, copy paste, phrases out of context. And then I'll ignore all the contrary evidence. That's the whole thing. And by the way, why don't the church fathers in the first 1,000 years argue like today's modern Roman Catholic papist apologists?
That's a great point.
Have you ever noticed that they don't argue at all like them? Like they're spending all their time arguing Christology, Trinitarian theology. Why aren't they just doing papal apologetics in the first 1,000 years? Oh, well, because it developed and it wasn't explicated very clearly. Well, then why wasn't it explicated right away? Wouldn't it have been in Rome's interest if they had all this prerogative and power to immediately magisterially state what the doctrine of the church was? Why isn't this in the creed, by the way? Okay, so Lachlan, what's up?
Hey Jay, I'm sort of pushing back from a Roman Catholic sort of point of view. I converted to the church probably around 3 months ago from a Protestant Anglican background. I sort of been pushing through the church fathers for the last year, and for the last 3 months I've sort of been starting to get into the Greek fathers at the moment, and just started reading through Maximus the Confessor and his sort of logoi doctrine.
Good.
And it was sort of his logoi doctrine that sort of made me sort of configure as an Anglican that my sort of view of Reformed sacraments didn't really line up with sort of in hypostasis and the Chalcedonian fathers, and it sort of collapses really Christology in a sense and sort of isolates it.
Well, I mean,
so
let me interject real quick here, because I had a similar track, right, where I sort of was Catholic. I was trad cat and started reading Maximus and Cappadocians, and that's when I started encountering a lot of this stuff that just isn't Roman Catholic theology. Like Maximus says, the energies are the things around God. So, I mean, how are you gonna? I mean, especially when it comes to Christology, right? I mean, he makes the energies essential to his Christological doctrine to refute the monothelites and the monoenergists. So, I mean, is that not the essence energy distinction?
Yeah, so that's where I'd like to go with this as well, because I've sort of I haven't really done a lot of Pauline theology, if I'm being honest, so I can't really push back too much. But from what I understand, is from what I gathered from Maximus, is he sort of keeps all things in the logos. So it's like even the logoi doctrine is sort of a procession inside the one logos. The many is the one, and the one, the many,
Well, the procession the procession of the energies and the logi are also energies. is through the Logos, but there's no in the Logos procession, because all of the energies, as Basil says, have a triadic movement. They move from the Father through the Son and the Spirit. So everything in the Trinity is triadic. And I don't know if you're reading the Ambigua, but if you progress through the Ambigua, you're going to notice that he talks about the energies and the operations all the time, and he explicitly says they're not the essence. So, I mean, Maximus teaches the essence-energy distinction explicitly, not just in that, but more so in Christology, because he says in Christ there's two wills and two energies, and the energies deify the human nature. That is impossible with the Roman Catholic doctrine that grace or the divine energies in us or in the human nature of Christ are a supernatural created reality.
Yeah, specifically Ambigua 7 and 10 speaks about that a lot.
See, I would say because sort of the logos of our nature, I mean, you know, sort of in hypostasis, and everybody has a logos of their own nature. And so in a sense, the logos of your own nature is created because it's inseparable from you. So in a sense, it is created grace. And that
that's not right. No, Maximus. No, you don't understand. You're misunderstanding the Logi doctrine. So the Logi are the divine ideas. They're uncreated divine thought wills, and the created order is created based on the pattern of those. So, for example, your created nature is a created nature. That's not grace. Grace is the uncreated energy of God that deifies you. In fact, there's a specific statement in the Ambigua that I've cited in multiple places where Maximus says, the same energy that God has is the energy that deifies the saints. So unless you think God has created energies, which would be the Tim Gordon Thomistic position, which is idolatry, no, it's the same energy that God has that deifies us. That's why Jesus says that we partake of his glory that he had with the Father before the foundation of the world in John 17. God's glory is not a creature. So Maximus is very explicit, and I've read him extensively, at least a few thousand pages of St. Maximus. You're going to notice that he consistently says the energies are uncreated grace. That's not the same thing as the logi of you, which is a divine idea and pattern of you, but your nature is created. It's not a divine grace.
Yes, but our natures are sort of in hypostases of these divine ideas. And so there's in hypostasis, like my nature and
you're misunderstanding the terminology. In hypostasis refers to the mode of the nature that you have. The logi are not in hypostatized. The logi are divine energies. What's in hypostatized is the nature in the person Bob, in the person Jay.
Yes, but I think because my nature is in hypostasis because of the logoi, there's sort of a inseparableness to the logoi, that there's no complication between my logoi and my nature that is in hypostasized.
Yeah, again, you're not understanding.
Like using incarnational logic, it seems to be that
you don't understand these things. You're confusing the terms. So the things are related, but you're collapsing them. So the logi is the plan and process that God has for you in his divine mind. That includes your birth. It includes your process and maturation and flourishing, and your eschatological end goal. That's the logi, the plan, the architecture that God has for you. It is not identical to your nature. The logi is an uncreated divine thought. It's a divine idea. And God creates you on the basis of the eternal predetermination or plan that he has of you. But you grow and progress and mature either in accord with that logi or against that logi, which is your downfall. So that's what is the architecture or the structure of reality. It is not reality itself. There's a distinction between, for example, in God's mind, there's an uncreated number 7 that he has an idea of. But the number 7 is a created reality that's based on. Another way to show this is Maximus's doctrine of universals. Universals are not logi. Universals are patterned on the logi of the universal. So there's a universal concept that is operant in the created order, but according to Maximus, universals can perish. They can go away. So that shows us that natures and universals are not logi.
Okay. I think I get where you're coming from. I just think maybe where I was getting caught up is based on the idea that the logoi are sort of, where I was sort of placing that was, well, they in hypostasize each instance of our nature, and we are sustained in a sense by the divine ideas, by, well, how they relate to the one will of God. So in a sense, the logoi sort of, their sort of relation to us is the constant will of being, I suppose. So we are tied up to it in a sense. I think
No, we are. You exist.
Was his statement for the Logos of God, who is always God, will always and in all things actualize the mystery of his embodiment, and sort of seeing these logoi as inseparable from creation.
No, that's not true. It's not true. That's why they're called thought wills. Don't you think God has in his mind, God has omniscience and knowledge of worlds that he didn't create, right?
Yeah.
So there are logi of which they were not actualized, because God has knowledge of a world where there's no Aquinas or there's no, there's no Beatles. Okay. But God didn't create those worlds. So not every divine idea has its created analog. And that's why Maximus and other church fathers will call them thought wills. And because only certain logi were actualized in the created order, namely the ones that he created on the basis of. But God is omniscient, and as Basil says, God has infinite energies, not just many, infinite. So the thoughts of God, by the way, which are the divine logi, Basil says the thoughts of God are also infinite. So there's infinite logi. But he didn't create infinite worlds. He created this specific world, which is why it's tied not to Platonic ideas of conceptualism, but he says the logi that he willed are, you're correct to say, inhypostatized in the logos, meaning that the logos is the one that determined, because its creation happens through him, which would be created and which would not. I mean, the Father and the Son and the Spirit all decided. It wasn't the Son, and not the Father. But when he talks about that the logi are inhypostatized, he means that they're also personal. And this is if you read Tolofson's dissertation on the logi, he says this is what Maximus is doing to combat Platonic impersonalism, because Plato thinks that the divine ideas are really the determiners of what emanates from the monad, and Maximus wants to distance the created order and the divine ideas from Platonism by saying, no, they're not immaterial, or they're not ideas that are determinative causes. They are ideas that the Son wills to create, and hence thought wills for the created order, and that makes it not Platonic. So there's a very important distinction. If you read the Tolofson dissertation on this, the whole book is about that. This is why it's not Platonism or Platonic divine conceptualism.
Yeah. No, thanks, Jay.
Yeah, keep reading, though. You're on the right track. Also read Free Choice and St. Maximus. That will help, I think, sort of lay this out. Oh, I didn't mean to, FD, I didn't mean to remove you. So excuse me. I'm sorry for that. I hit the wrong person. Okay, who disagrees? We're probably going to try to wrap it up pretty soon here, because we've been going for 3.5 hours. Guys, thank you so much. Nick is available on YouTube and TikTok. He is Fearless Truth. Josh says for $5, do a debate with Wagner on essence energy distinction. I've asked him twice to debate different topics, and the last 2 times I've asked, Wagner explicitly says, I am not a debater and I'm not doing debates. He says, if you disagree, reply to the videos. So Wagner has disagreed twice the last 2 times I've asked to debate. I think I did. I mean, I don't remember mentioning energies. I think I asked him to debate Thomism and epistemology, and he said no. And then I said, what about papacy? And he said no. So Wagner does officially, in 2 replies in the last year, does not want to do a formal debate. Skate Monkey, no, we did that one. The Rad God, $5. Papists are actually Mohammedans in terms of argumentation. I would say nowadays they pretty much argue and act like Muslims. Yeah. Vatican II doctrine makes complete sense for their religion. Maybe actually Muslims and Catholics worship the same God. Well, they kind of act the same. AKA Yeshua, $5. Jay, would you debate Deconstruction Zone? He's an atheist and he's convincing people to become atheists. He teaches the God of the Bible is false. I mean, he could call in. if they want to have a
Another
conversation.
TikTok atheist.
Is he a TikTok Reddit?
I mean, he went on one time with Inspiring Philosophy on a
Mhm.
big debate, and Inspiring Philosophy just showed like, bro, you're a TikTok.
So it's low tier.
Very low tier stuff. God is bad type stuff.
Alex Orthodox, shout out to Alex Soren, $5. Nick sells Coca-Cola better than Kendall Jenner sells Pepsi. Blessings to
Dude,
both
I'm
of
telling, bro, they need to sponsor me. I'm telling you, this is quality stuff here. Man.
Alex says, why can't we get Roman Catholics to just give straight up answers to any questions? Well, because it's difficult. That's why. Okay, Colin, what's up, man? You're ferociously thumbing down. Go ahead. What's up, man?
Yes, hello.
What's up, bro?
Hey, go ahead.
So the Table of Nations it's very accurate. I agree. But I don't think it's talking about every nation.
Okay, that's fine, man. I don't really have any hard opinion to debate you on the Table of Nations in Genesis.
Okay, but it relates to the flood and your point you were making earlier.
Okay, how do we know that it's inaccurate? What's the proper view?
No, I'm saying that it's accurate, but it's not talking about every nation that
okay,
exists.
and how do we know this? What's your source for this?
Because Native Americans in Minnesota, Ojibwe people, can you say which part of Table of Nations they come from?
Well, the fact that there's gaps in the history of the Table of Nations wouldn't mean that it's not true. It just means that there's a lot of things about the antediluvian, post-diluvian world that we just don't know. So, but how would Native Americans necessarily disprove Genesis 10 being universal?
Because I think that the flood didn't kill everybody. It left some people alive. But I have faith that, because the Native Americans were on the continent before the flood happened.
How do you know that?
I trust scientific people, but maybe I shouldn't.
Then we go. Yeah, good job. Trust the science people.
The science people say it.
Science people said it, man. Dominic, what's up? Yeah, go. Trust the science people, then go for it. Coleman says for $5. Sorry, I'm new. Do you know Rabin Ibrahim? I don't. Do you know who that is? The apologist.
No clue.
Somebody mentioned that the other day, but I'm not familiar with it. Dominic, what's up? Okay, he can't connect. Joseph, what's up? Dominic, are you there? Dominic, what's up?
What's up? Hey.
Joseph, what's up? I'm mute. Joseph, I'm mute. Why are you raising your hand? I'm mute. Or excuse me, Jones Pepe, I'm mute. Why are you raising your hand, man?
I'm sorry, Jay. My bad.
Okay.
Oh, what's up, Jay? What's up, Nick?
What's up?
I guess for the sake of time, I have some questions here. I'm a Catholic, so I do watch your content, but yeah, so I guess I'll just rapid fire these questions really fast. If that's okay with you.
Okay, what's the first one?
Oh, okay. So, how do you view the Fatima visions and the fact that the children said that everyone must do the rosary? Is this evidence of the Catholic faith? Or Catholic truth, that is?
Is Zaytun Marian apparitions proof of the Coptic faith?
I've never looked into that. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I mean, it was like tens of thousands of people like Fatima, so how am I supposed to know which one is the real Marian apparition?
So there's Marian apparitions in the Coptic faith. So that's, okay.
The most famous apparition of like the last 50 or 60 years is Zaytun, Egypt.
Okay, good. And then the next question. I guess if Nick wants to join, I would like to
sure.
hear too.
Nick, feel free to say what you want.
Maybe I'll try to answer the next one.
So, how do you view Catholic monks? Are they heretics necessarily?
All Roman Catholics, as a profession, would be heretical.
Everyone that is outside the church is going to be formally a heretic.
It wouldn't matter whether you're a monk or not. Monks are just laity, by the way, unless they're preachers.
Okay, and then the next one is Peter Diamond's VaticanCatholic.com rebuttal video on orthodoxy is a common video I see with trad Catholics. How do you view this, and would we ever see a debate between you and Peter Diamond?
I've responded to it probably 10 times in the last 7 years, so you can find all those response videos on Sedevacantism on my channel. And no, I'll never interact with them on a personal level for other reasons. Who's next? Raise your hand. Anybody have a specific FDA? Did you want to come back? I didn't mean to get rid of you. I hit the wrong person. Papist. Oh, we got a papist. What's up, man? Derp says for $20. Happy birthday, boss man. Thank you. Appreciate that. Happy birthday to you too, man. Papist, what's up? I'm mute.
Dang, thought we had one.
He's trying to connect, so we'll give it a second, see if he connects. Desky, what's up, man? Desky, you want to unmute while Papist is trying to connect?
Oh, hi. Good evening.
Hey.
Happy birthday, Mr. J. Dyer. I'm a papist for your information, so please be patient with me. It's an honor to talk to you, first off. I watch your content pretty regularly. I like your discussions as atheists. They're really awesome.
Thanks.
And I learn a lot from them. But I guess I had a couple questions in a response to a video you made in regards to Fatima.
Okay.
What would you say is your personal stance on the whole miracle generally?
I mean, did you hear the previous guy?
Oh yeah, but I'm wondering what your stance is on it, because I think there's errors in the way he framed his argument. I'm trying to understand you before
I mean, I don't think any apparitions or claims like this prove or disprove anything. They have very little weight with me in terms of apologetics or epistemology, because every religion, every sect, every cult claims to have miracles and visions and predictions, and it's literally impossible for any individual to go and empirically, scientifically verify every one of these claims. Now, I'm not saying there are no miracles, but I'm saying, in my view, miracles attend and attest to whatever the true faith is. They're going to accompany it, but they don't themselves necessarily prove it in some strict epistemic sense. So to me, it's just classed with any of the other types of apparition, Garabandal or Medjugorje, or the Coptics with the Marian apparitions in Zaytun, Egypt. Like, none of that proves or disproves anything for me. They have little to no weight, in my view.
But even if they don't have any weight for you personally, but you would also understand that each apparition or each individual miracle probably has a differing amount of substance behind it. Like, obviously, not every claim is valid just because it's claimed. But
no, I mean, I'm sure some of them have more pedigree or more so-called evidences than others. I mean, sure.
Mm-hmm. And so, in regards to Fatima specifically, like, I understand that one of your main rebuttals to, I guess, Fatima being used as almost kind of like, not as like brute evidence towards Catholicism, but almost kind of like if it were to point toward the direction, it would be towards there, but I wouldn't say it could be specifically to prove Catholicism. You usually rebut it by saying, like, well, does they too improve the Coptic Orthodox Church, right? And I feel like that's kind of misunderstanding the evidence behind both of them, because in regards to Our Lady Fatima and Our Lady of Zaytun, the Coptic Orthodox is very public and very, very open to the fact that Our Lady of Zaytun was a silent apparition where there was no doctrine bound to her, but she mainly just appeared in miracle healing.
What does any of that have to do? You're just sort of like giving this explanation and story about Fatima and Zaytun, and like, but how does this prove or disprove anything with a religion?
Well, I'm telling you that Our Lady, that in regards to the difference in substance between the two of them, is that Our Lady Fatima actually has doctrine connected to her. Like, for example, the affirmation of
why does having doctrine connected to it in any way necessarily make it true or better?
Well, because if it did happen, right, and if Mary did actually show up during Fatima,
right,
and she did say that her heart was immaculate, then wouldn't it affirm the immaculate conception?
So that's, you understand begging the question?
Excuse me?
Do you understand begging the question?
How would I be begging the question?
Because you change the criteria of what makes it substantive, and namely, if it's true, then it would have, because it has doctrine connected to it. If it's true, then it would have doctrine connected to it. So it's like,
oh, no. Sorry, I guess I'm not really like a debater or anything like that. I mean, I just want to know your thoughts.
Yeah, but this is why debate matters, is that these bad arguments convince people of things that are not convincing or not good arguments. So you're missing the point of, like, go ahead, FDA. FTA, go ahead. What do you want to say? Father Deacon, go ahead.
How could it prove something false? That's what all of you guys miss. It's like, if it's a false doctrine and a false religion, how can it be like, well, look at this miracle and the Holy Theotokos proving something false? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, they argue that it's proving a true religion.
Well, I would argue it points. I wouldn't say it's strict proof. I'm not going to go that far into saying it, but I'd say it would affirm
But why
something
would
that.
the Theotokos be pointing to a false religion? Even pointing to. And stuff that's false. Like, why would she have anything to do with it?
Oh well, I'm not Orthodox. I don't believe Catholicism is false. So I'd argue that
It doesn't matter what you believe. It is false. I don't care what you believe. It actually is false. That's the whole point. So you're going, but look at this miracle that proves something that's actually false in reality. Regardless, it doesn't change being false because you don't believe it to be false. It's false.
I mean, what would you argue happened during the event of Fatima, if you don't mind me asking?
But it really doesn't matter what we think happened, because it could be, I mean, it could be an actual manifestation of an evil spirit. It could be a government hoax and forgery. I mean, it could just be a fake news story. I mean, the only evidence we have is there's a Portuguese news article claiming that 10,000 people saw this. I mean, there was fake news stories in the 1800s, right?
Yeah, but just because there are fake news stories doesn't mean that this news story must be fake.
So why? Okay, look, you're missing the point.
Say that. So you're saying it must be true. Jay's just saying we don't know. It could be false. So especially if it's pointing to a false religion, like that would be evidence itself that it's like, well, obviously it's not legitimate.
So Father Deacon's point is that evidences in these kinds of events are secondary to the question of the religion itself being true. So you're trying to approach the religion as somehow vindicated or attested to through Fatima, and he's saying it's the other way around. The religion is either true or false first, and that will actually determine whether we accept or reject Fatima. So it's not so you're approaching it from an evidentialist perspective, and we're saying we're not evidentialists. We're not going to accept all these myriads of competing claims about miracles. I mean, do you accept Sai Baba's claims of miracles in Hinduism?
Well, I think every miracle claim needs to be judged on a case-by-case basis. Not every claim
Okay,
is
so
equal.
this is why this is so
that.
okay. This is so low tier and silly. How is anybody going to? Are you going to go through 1 million different religious and cult claims about the miracles of that sect? How are you going to judge all those on a case-by-case basis?
And also, why don't I just create a newspaper story that can be judged on, like you said, on case-by-case basis, where it has dogma and it has everything that you want, right? It'd be like, well, in terms of the quality, doesn't this seem better? So if that's your standard, we'll just create one. We'll just create a news story and be like, hey, trust us. 20,000 people and this new dogma was given. Oh, it came from the Theotokos too. So if that's your standard, man, that's pretty bad.
Well, that's not. Well, I say what substantial. What makes it stronger evidence in regards to the miracle claim would be the fact that the newspaper and a lot of the witnesses were hostile. The first newspaper to publish the miracle was.
Yeah, that's what. But again,
then I add that in too.
Yeah, just add that in. I mean, you could tweak the story.
Yeah, like I can do everything you say about that. I can recreate that.
I mean, what would have been their motive to, I guess, make it some kind of like a.
Right. I appreciate your question. It's enough of this. We're not going to have to do a whole epistemology lecture for like why this or that claim doesn't prove the thing. John, what's on your mind?
As you know, I've been combing through all of the neo-Pentecostal and Pentecostal stuff.
Well, there's a lot of claims of visions in Pentecostalism too. Maybe. I've seen news articles. I've seen news articles claiming.
Realizes that Billy Graham appeared to me.
No. Listen. What if? Think about CBN, right? Pat Robertson. CBN is the news outlet for Pat Robertson's evangelical nonsense. Okay, Pat Robertson claimed to have visions and messages from Jesus. Maybe he does a public mega church thing. We've had Protestants and charismatics call in and say, I've witnessed mega church charismatic miracles. Are you telling me that God's Holy Spirit is not healing the people at my mega church? And how is that not a direct proof of my mega church Christianity? So let's take that, and then let's take the Roman Catholic Fatima claim. How are they in any way substantially different?
I have evidence from watching TV in the 1990s that Robert Tilton healed 1,000 people.
There you go. The farting preacher himself.
He made the claim on cable TV back in the 90s. You can go on YouTube, get all the clips of Robert Tilton literally blinking and freaking out, and claiming that there are thousands of people who have been healed by him just uttering gibberish through the television screen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but as he said, Fatima is more substantive. So now you move the goalposts and you've tacked on this extra thing that, well, yeah, see, but Fatima has more stuff going on, and it's older and it's cooler, and so that's better than Pat Robertson.
Actually, there's Pentecostal visions before Fatima.
Interesting.
It's like Descartes' stupid argument that he presents in the meditation. Well, it has more presentational reality, you see.
Little Big Fish has a good comment and says, at the Azusa Street revival, there were many people claiming that a gigantic fireball of God shot up 50 feet in the air. So that proves the Azusa Street revival.
Yeah, if we can show something's false, it doesn't matter how many claims you make on it.
And the weird thing is, I do believe that a lot of the Pentecostal stuff and, subsequent other stuff is demonic. I'm not saying that it isn't, but there were, if you read into that history like we have, is there were people in other parts of the world who were attracted to coming to California, and particularly Azusa, that by similar visions in other, like in Romania and things like this, and in Armenia. And so, yeah, I do believe that stuff is demonic, but at the same time, once again, just because somebody has a vision somewhere and it appears to be something nice and good, it's not always the case.
Absolutely. We'll get to the last couple super chats here as we close out about 4 hours. Ruiz says for $5, Fatima is actually nowadays a business. Who can prove whether it was an apparition or was it a demonic interaction? Well, ultimately, it's, Paul says, don't believe visions of angels or whoever in Galatians 1. He says, use my theology and what I delivered to you as the standard. And Roman Catholics flip it around, charismatics flip it around, and they make the visions and the experiences the standard of the divine revelation. It's the other way around. All right, guys, thank you so much. We got up to about 1,500 live today. Shout out to Jim Bob with the Jortlandians coming in. I hope you guys enjoyed my show yesterday with Jim Bob. We went pretty deep on a couple movies that were pretty allegorical, symbolic films that were fun to decode. And thanks again to Nick for joining me today and chiming in with all of his apologetics. He is at Fearless Truth. He is linked in the show description, so go follow Nick. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, definitely. We'll do it live on mine too. We can try to do some debates as well.
Yeah,
so.
Maybe you can probably get more Muslims. They don't want to come around here anymore, but they don't come around here no more.
We'll have to like put you on a black screen or something so they don't see, and then just bring you in like the Terminator in the background.
I can hide.
You're the secret weapon. Yeah.
Well, I'll have like a voice changer or something. I'll have like a really gay voice, and I'll come on and I'll talk like this. I just am so scared of Muslims that I just thank you for bringing.
Fry you.
Yeah, right.
So we got Matthew McConaughey on,
yeah. I'll do the whole debate in Matthew McConaughey. I'll make sure I didn't miss any super chats. Nelly says for $20. Thank you so much. Happy birthday to you, man. Here's another one I missed. Desync says for $10. Happy birthday, Jay. I discovered you in 2024. I've been watching you consistently ever since. My only question is, do you think tag by itself is sufficient to argue the existence of the Christian God? Yes, and I have a talk called From Tag to Trinity, so I just renamed it so you could find it more easily. Guys, be sure and follow Nick over on Fearless Truth. Be sure and follow Father Deacon Ananias on Twitter on Patristic Faith. Thank you guys for joining me. A lot of fun, and everybody have a good night.